Those who've adopted older children, what was your experience like? My best friend's family adopted a kid our age when we were in high school. I think he moved in with them around 14 or 15 years of age. He still has a relationship with his biological family, and he doesn't usually refer to his adopted parents as mum and dad. He'll say second mum and second dad, or just use their names. But he does refer to my friend and her brother as siblings. We're all mid to late 20s now, and according to her, it's been really great. My friend and her family are small white people, and he's a really big black guy, so he'll sometimes show pictures of his adoptive parents to people and be like, "This is my mom and dad." And when others comment about him being adopted, he'll pretend he had no idea he was adopted. All in all, it was a great move. He's been able to attend the college of his choice and go into a field of study he wouldn't have otherwise been able to. My parents never adopted him, but when I was 14, we had a 15-year-old boy move in with us who stayed until he was 21. It was very strange for me as a teenage girl to have an older boy, who I'd never met, move into my house, and to see my parents take him in as one of their own. There were suddenly all these rules for me, like I wasn't allowed to wear pajamas around the house or be home alone with him for the first year or so. However, he turned out to be the loveliest kid. While we never really got over the awkwardness and never really bonded, the whole experience was overwhelmingly positive. In particular, my mum became much happier with the fulfillment that she got from the experience, as she'd been struggling to find purpose in her life. He'll never know how much our family improved from having him, and I hope that one day I'll have the chance to tell him. I've 4 adopted siblings, 3 of which were adopted as teens. The first few days were always rough. My brother Chuck got into a fight with my mum and left. He went to a friend's who'd also been putting him up for a bit, but couldn't stay longer than one night. When he got to school, he broke down in the principal's office and they called my mum. She left work and he apologized for the fight and absolutely begged to still be able to live with us. She told him, "Just because you screw up one time, it doesn't mean we're going to give up on you." He moved back in and immediately made my brother and I look bad. He was so grateful just to have a place to stay, food every night, and to feel loved that any chores were the least he could do. My sisters were very similar situations. When my sister Liz crashed my mum's car, she hid at a friend's for like 3 days until my mum convinced her she was allowed to come home. Or when she got pregnant at 16, she couldn't even tell my mum. She just had to nod yes or no while my mum basically played 20 questions. As the years have gone on, all of them have grown into pretty well-rounded people. They've managed to make something of themselves. They definitely have noticeable emotional scars, but they cope as well as anyone. I'm sure that there are some heartbreakers to come in our long line of stories tonight, but it's great to hear that when given an environment of tolerance and forgiveness, people can really shine and grow into well-adjusted adults. Kindness is key, as always. I was adopted. Taken in at 16 and formally adopted at 18. The first couple of days were a little awkward, but it's been an absolute joy. I still have some trouble feeling like a legitimate piece of the family, perhaps because I wasn't adopted when I was really young, but I've been trying to fight that feeling. Family isn't bound by blood, which is why people can get married or find family when theirs has been cut loose or deceased. Nobody should have to be alone in this world. My brother is adopted. He's 11 and turning 12 next week. My dad adopted him after a year of fostering. He's called me his sister since the fostering began. He's the sweetest kid in the world. He never fights, never complains, and never talks back. Gets perfect grades. The situation in which my dad comes to adopt him is a strange one, and I think it has a lot to do with how grateful he is to be a part of our family. I was an only child for 23 years, and I married and moved out of my parents' house years ago. I still love my brother, and I don't think of him any differently than I would any other sibling. We haven't adopted, but we've had foster kids through the years. Uniformly, the older kids walk into the house, find the dogs, and interact with them first. Then they'll ask where the TV is, we don't have one, and they'll express disbelief and disgust that we don't. Then they resume playing with the dogs. The first few days are always really weird because you've invited someone else with an entirely different culture or lifestyle into your home and you raise them. We find stuff they do a little weird and they find stuff we do a little weird. 2 brothers we had, 6 and 12, didn't know the names of meals, for example. They called them all lunch. They'd never had meals, they just snacked on whatever they could find through the day. So they called it the lunch that we eat in the morning and the lunch at night. The same brothers also steadfastly refused to wear shirts in the house because, well, they'd never done so. We recently had a chance to talk to the younger one, who's back in care in another part of the state, and we asked him what those first days were like. He told us he was so little and so scared that we'd be mean to him. He was afraid that we'd bully him. He said he was less scared when we had dogs and that he was really glad when we became the parents God gave him. Words from his current foster mum, I think. Then he said he wanted to be a foster parent when he grew up so he could show kids that it's not that bad, and my heart ate my throat, and now we can never stop fostering. When I was 14, a family at our church that was unable to have children of their own decided to adopt a child from Russia. After a long process of paperwork and a ton of fees, they went over to go meet her and bring her home. When they got there, they found out that she had 4 older brothers and sisters living with her in the orphanage. Evidently, the orphanage had no issue splitting them up, but the family friends weren't willing to do that. They did bring her home, but immediately started campaigning at church to get the other 4 children adopted. 3 of the 4 remaining children were adopted within a week or 2, but the oldest child was 16 years old, and nobody wanted to adopt someone that old. At the time, I was 14 years old, and my older blood brother was 18. My parents were convinced that he fit too perfectly within our ages to be able to let him split up from his other brothers and sisters. So, we adopted him. After the same ridiculous amount of paperwork and fees that the first family had had to go through, we were able to get him over to the US. When my parents brought him back, he didn't speak any English and had been smoking cigarettes and working a construction job since he was 12. It definitely took a bit of work to get him to quit smoking and tell him that he had to start high school. The first year was a bit weird. We kept an English to Russian dictionary handy at all times to communicate, and we made a lot of borscht to help him feel at home, which we found out later he hated. He loved computers and playing games and was able to find friends at school very quickly with the same interests, which was great because people who play WoW all the time tend to stay out of trouble. He was actually very smart and able to catch up very quickly in school, but constantly used misunderstanding the language to get away with things. My parents didn't let it slide though. They'd pull out the English to Russian dictionary and lay out how he'd done messed up. They were always sure to not single him out though. When I messed up, they punished me exactly like they punished him, so that he could see it was no different for anyone. Early on, he definitely tried to bully me a bit, but he capped out at 5'5" and I grew to 6'2". So that didn't last long. I always enjoyed video games too, and we were able to start bonding over that as my older blood brother went off to college. Me and him never had a lot to talk about, but would sit quietly and play games. I always kind of thought that we weren't very close, but as time went on, I realized it was just an understanding that we were very different people, but we were there for each other. After a year or so, it was very normal. He was just part of the family. The biggest thing my parents did to make sure it was clear he was part of the family was to make sure that they went to every single activity he was part of. Every track meet, every school function, every church event, they were there and they always dragged me along too. At the time, I hated it, but I realize now that they just wanted to make sure he never questioned whether or not he was part of the family. After high school, he went off to college and graduated, and he's now a successful construction manager who makes way more money than me and isn't afraid to give me crap about it. I mostly see him at family gatherings, which he comes to every single one of by choice. But when we see each other, we immediately pick back up where we left off and try to hit each other in the groin, because he's my brother. Adopted my daughter when she was 14. Every kid is different and comes with their own set of problems. However, all adopted children have attachment and abandonment issues. It was very difficult, but we pulled through, and now she's 20 and doing great. It's very hard, but you gain courage and happiness from the knowledge that you saved a person's life. You can pull them out of loneliness, unhappiness, and living in fear, and give them love and happiness. Nothing else I ever do in my life is going to come close to how good I feel about my wife and I deciding to adopt. If you go for it, look for support. Get the government to help provide you with therapy for the child and yourselves. Learn about attachment and abandonment issues, and the therapies that deal with them. Yeah, I can imagine that the later you get a kid, they've probably been in the foster system for a while, or they've been recently taken away from a less than ideal home situation for a bit. It must be so hard to strike the right balance between loving support and not overwhelming them. Lots of heartwarming stories today. I'm a sibling. My parents adopted twice, one at 7, the other at 12, several years later. We're all over 21 now. I think our family has experienced both ends of the spectrum. Couldn't have been more different experiences. For the 7-year-old, it felt like they'd been with our family all along in a very short time, a matter of months. It was so much fun watching them learn everything you take for granted a little bit, like trips to the swimming hole, seeing a dog, stuff like that. Pretty much a Hallmark movie. The 12-year-old was a much more difficult adjustment. Still had great fun welcoming and getting to know them, but there was a totally reasonable lack of trust that made getting started slower. Obviously, loved them to pieces, but it often felt much more like a Mexican standoff than a honeymoon. There was some major detachment disorder. They never really let one parent in and probably never will. There was lots of lying and manipulation, triangulating family members, just all around very tricky. This is expected. You have to understand that every adult in this person's life has abandoned them. They learned to survive under harsh circumstances. It was very heartbreaking for me to see and understand both sides of a broken relationship. For many years, one parent desperately desiring a healthy relationship with their child, who they love, but also understanding it probably can't happen. There's definitely a chip missing regarding empathy, but you roll with it and love them anyway. I know it was incredibly taxing on both parents and the child, but ultimately they had a safe place to grow and learn, and that's the job. Good vibes are a secondary luxury. Adoption is very beautiful, but it can also be earth-shatteringly difficult. I have a lot of respect for adoptive parents. Parenting is already difficult without modifiers. It's been beautiful for our family, and also very difficult sometimes. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. We adopted an almost 15-year-old through international adoption. Without going into too much detail, there was some pretty extreme neglect, trauma, and a hostile situation growing up. We were his first actual family setting. The first year and a half was, to put it mildly, hell. We were the worst-case scenario story they warn you could happen during your adoption classes. Violent outbursts several times a week, thankfully directed only at me. If they'd been towards our other kiddo, this would have been a different story. Multiple screaming, throw-down tantrums daily, several personal hygiene issues, food hoarding, extreme anxiety and hyper-awareness, horrendous trauma-based phobias of the dark, loud noises, small spaces, dogs, certain foods, rope and fire, stuff like that. The only places he felt safe enough to relax were public areas with a lot of people around. Anytime you were one-on-one with him, he was on alert. We took him to therapy, all the therapy, sometimes 2 or 3 times per week. We took our other kid to therapy to make sure he was doing okay during all of this and put measures in place to keep him safe. We went to our own therapy and education sessions to make sure we were being as effective on the parenting front as possible and to deal with the second-hand trauma from the stories our son began sharing with us as he started to trust us more. We converted our bedroom into a safe room and packed up any household item that had personal significance and put it in storage. We set up an emergency call system so that we could have someone else over anytime he had a violent episode, as he would immediately calm down if there was a witness. We enrolled him in a class to help him learn social and life skills, and we took him to karate class, which given the violence seemed like a terrible idea to a lot of people, to help him learn to feel more safe and in control of himself. We got him onto medication for his anxiety, which helped tremendously. About a year in, something clicked for him. I think maybe he realized that we weren't going to bully or reject him and that it was okay to let us in. He'd spent a lot of time trying to drive us away to protect himself. If he didn't care about our family, he wouldn't hurt us as badly if we, in his words, threw him away. Spaces between outbursts started getting longer. The food hoarding, stealing, and personal hygiene issues disappeared. He started to take on more personal responsibility. He began participating in family activities and wanted to spend time with us. It's been nothing short of breathtaking watching him change and grow. We're nearly 6 years in now. Our son no longer has violent outbursts or tantrums. All grandma's antiques are back on the mantel. His phobias, while not completely gone, are far more manageable. Our goals for him have gone from keep him away from crime and out of jail to help him live independently and pursue his personal goals. He asked to change his name so he could be named after his adoptive dad, and he changed his last name to ours. I get handmade cards for my birthday, and sometimes he gives me hugs, just because. Parenting isn't supposed to come with prizes, but that first, "I love you, Mum," was perhaps the greatest gift I've ever been given. Sometimes he tells me, I had bad things happen to me in the past, and I can't change that, but they can't make me do things. I get to choose my future. He's a pretty incredible person, and we're so proud of the young man he's become. I adopted 2 daughters when they were 7 and 10 from foster care. They came from a horrific home. They were both severely traumatized. First, going from no kids to a single, in my case, mom of 2 very broken children is not for the faint of heart. You need a very good, understanding support system. Second, you need to have your own therapy sessions. It's incredibly helpful to vent to a professional who deals with the emotionally damaged children as a profession. And third, they'll have issues for a long time. And there's no quick fix. Even if their birth homes weren't super traumatic, you have to remember they lost everything. Their parents, grandparents, friends, teachers, classmates, neighbors, pets, toys, home, and clothes. Just imagine everyone and everything you've ever cared about and have ever known being loaded onto an airplane and crashed into the ocean, gone forever. That's what they have to deal with. The scars last a lifetime. Fourth, make sure their teachers, daycare providers, new family members, and parents of their friends know what they're going through. The way emotionally damaged children act out can really catch people off guard if they're not expecting it. Give them tips on how to handle it if possible. Fifth, Remind them over and over it's okay to be sad, angry, scared, and hurt, and whatever else they need. It's important for them to feel it's okay to feel this way. Sixth, many times the child keeps their emotions bottled up so they can feel certain they're safe. A lot of the time they don't feel safe until the adoption is done, and they're sure that they're not going back. This is when the years of pent-up anger, fear, anxiety, and stuff comes out. It can be really rough, so be ready. Remember they're doing this because they feel safe with you. They formed a bond with you. Seventh, give them as much choice as possible. Victims of a problematic upbringing suffer greatly from having their sense of control taken away. Do you want your glass filled with milk this high or this high? Do you want to go to bed at 8:20 or 8:30? Do you want bubbles in your bath or not? They sound small, but every time they get to make a choice, they gain a little bit of control back. It adds up over time. And eighth, through a million, tell them you love them and nothing they can do will ever make you stop. They will test this a lot. Mine are 15 and 18 now. It's been a rough road, but I couldn't imagine my life without them. We adopted our 2 boys out of foster care when they were 4 and 5. Not necessarily older, but it's older than's typical, I can tell you. They were in a bad place in their foster home, emotionally and physically, but that separation still took its toll. First, understanding it's a bit jarring to have no kids one day, and the next you have 2 who are fully dependent on you. It's obvious, but still nothing you can be prepared for. Next, know that if they come from a bad place, they're going to be sure you're bad as well. They'll be convinced no matter how nice you are, you'll do something awful as well. They'll test you. They'll misbehave to test you. They'll conspire to test you. But persistence will make a difference. You'll get frustrated, but the rewards of giving these kids a stable, loving home will never ever be replaced. It's been 10 years since we adopted them, and they're my best friends. We've seen them through so much, and while I certainly haven't been a perfect parent, I'm proud I've provided them a path and future they likely wouldn't have had otherwise, due to no fault of their own. Yep, and all I've been able to think about this entire time is how hard it would be to consistently be a good role model, whilst also being put through a very trying situation yourself, and I'm not sure I could. But I suppose no parent is perfect, and as long as you're doing your best and providing love and effort, then it counts for something. Wow. I adopted my daughter when she was 8. She's 13 now. She's a pretty easy person to get along with, so we didn't have any of the horror stories you read about. However, certain challenges were inevitable. She and I are very different people, and her temperament, and maybe her personality, were already pretty fully formed when she moved in. So while my son, adopted at age 3, and I can talk about things like politics, my daughter is just not interested in conversations that may lead to disagreements. This is just one example of a challenge where we recognize the difference in one another, and it took a while to figure out how to be a close mother or daughter in spite of these differences. Probably the biggest thing, though, is if you adopt an older child, you've got to recognize and respect that their loyalty will always be divided, and that's okay. I know she loves her bio mum, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I know that she feels divided between her old life and her new one, and my goal is to make that division as easy as possible for her. So, what's it like? Challenging. Less so for me than many other people because my daughter was fairly easy and I'm pretty flexible. And is it worth it? Hell yes. Little things that seem routine for you might not be routine for them. Kids just don't know because of a different way of doing things that was the way of life for them for 8 years. An example is teeth brushing. My kid's birth parents just didn't teach her how to properly brush her teeth. She just kind of chewed on the brush and didn't rinse her mouth out when she was done. I can speak from the other side of being the adoptee. I was adopted along with my biological little sister from Korea to the same parents in the States. I've always lived with the idea that one can choose their own family. It wasn't something merely given to you. Our parents were amazing, loving, dedicated people, and it only took a few days for our relationship to be the same as if I were their biological son for the last 6 years. Off the bat, I was calling my new parents Mum and Dad, while they called me son. My sister, on the other hand, took a long time to come around. She really struggled with her identity, being Korean, and having to adjust to an American home. She was really caught up with wondering if life could have been better if she was back in Korea, and if there was a more special bond between blood-related parents. That, along with the fact that we grew up in a fairly conservative, almost completely Caucasian area, we'd receive insensitive comments regularly. I think she felt very out of place. She'd often lash out at our parents and would claim if they were her real parents, they would have never done this or that. To this day, she calls our parents by their first names as a remnant of her rebellion. I think our parents have handled it well. They always supported her and realized that even with all the love they gave her, she'd need to figure it out on her own. It took her about 11 years until she turned 16 to figure things out and finally accept who she was. We'd always get odd stares as a family, since we look extremely different from our Jewish parents, but our parents cared for us, obviously much more than our biological parents did, and we should appreciate the opportunity of having a loving family that we've been given. I adopted a 16-year-old and have fostered 8 other children over the years. She's 23 now and thankfully still very much a part of our family. First, every child is different. There's no one way that it will go, and they all react in different ways. Second, plan on the first weeks, months, and even year to be relationship building, and it will take time. Invest in building the relationship and laying a loving and trusting foundation. There'll be friction, especially with older children, as they're used to doing things differently and likely have a more fully developed worldview that may be significantly different than yours. Overall, my approach is, leaving out a ton of details, first identifying things they like about themselves and show appreciation for those traits. Then demonstrate that you care and will take the time to listen to them and really understand their thoughts and perspectives. And finally, do research to set up appropriate boundaries and evolve them as the relationship deepens. This is especially important if they've had trauma in the past.
For those who have witnessed a wedding objection during the "speak now or forever hold your peace" portion, what happened? My mom got married to my stepdad. My uncle objected. After the attention was focused on him, he asked if they were still going fishing afterwards, to which my stepdad reached into his suit and pulled out his fishing hat. Very sweet and romantic. They loved to fish together. I was working at a wedding when I was younger. I was running the bar at the reception, which was very close to the hall the weddings were at. We were told that the reception would begin around 4 p.m. It was already about 3-ish and I was packing the fridges, the usual barman things, while one of the male guests was sitting there drinking. I asked if he was not joining the reception, to which he replied something along the lines of, "When I have the courage." He downs his drink and leaves. 10 minutes later, he's back, looking extremely disappointed. The guy orders a drink and less than 30 seconds later, another guy who's dressed extremely well, turns out to be the groom, walks in, punches him in the back of the head, and leaves. This dude just picked up his drink and continued sipping. I eventually found out that this dude had downed his drink, walked into the ceremony, and admitted to sleeping with the wife on her hen night, and again the night before the wedding. He was never invited to the wedding. He just felt the groom needed to know. So he found out where the wedding was, suited up, and dropped the info mid-ceremony. This was in the early 70s in semi-rural Washington state. My cousin was getting married, and my aunt and the mother of the groom did not get along well. During the ceremony, when the pastor got to the part about objecting, my aunt said something to my uncle, and the groom's mom jumped up and grabbed my aunt and they started going at it, all the way out the door and into the parking area. They were separated and everyone filed back into the barn, where the wedding continued. The best part though was when another one of my cousins simply walked into the woods after the wedding because that's where he lived. My aunt was getting married to her second husband, and during the "speak now or forever hold your peace" bit, their baby started crying. The dude officiating it said, "If anyone older than 6 months has any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace." He got a laugh and the wedding carried on. They're still together 10 years later, so I guess whatever my cousin had to say was misinformed. The best man at my stepsister's wedding did this. It happened at the rehearsal the night before. It was a very large wedding and the rehearsal was bigger than a lot of weddings. The minister was going over the vows quickly while giving instruction on what to do. When he said something about objections, the best man interrupted saying he had to put a stop to this. He was in love with the bride and was sure she felt the same way. My sister and everyone else was horrified. It caused plenty of chaos and confusion. As far as I know, after that, neither the bride nor groom ever spoke to him again. At my cousin's wedding, when the exchanging of the vows took place, my aunt shouted, "Wasn't there supposed to be a part where you could object?" Or something along those lines. A member of my wife's family had a pirate-themed wedding. A rival pirate appeared and objected to the wedding. The groom dueled him with rapiers and won. The groom himself, he just stood up there and started crying, and in front of everyone told the bride that he'd fallen out of love with her a while before, but he didn't know how to break it off. It was extremely uncomfortable. They both stepped out and 10 minutes later came back out and got married because she'd apparently told him she was pregnant. They're still together with 3 kids, and I'm not sure about the husband, but I can confirm that the wife is having an affair. Neither of them are happy, but she has a comfortable life and he doesn't seem to have the spine to leave. Nobody had said "speak now," but the groom's ex still decided to get up and scream that he was her soulmate, and that she forgave him for this whole thing and that they should leave now because he'd proven his point by breaking up with her 5 years earlier, falling in love, and holding a wedding. I ate so much cake and got so drunk at that wedding. Meanwhile, everyone else was screaming and throwing things. Good times. The bride was my boyfriend's ex. No idea why they invited us. One of my friends interrupted his cousin's wedding to come out of the closet. He couldn't understand why people were so pissed at him. This happened very recently, but in a different manner than the other comments I'm seeing. For years, the groom and the best man are super close, room together, and the running joke is that they're more than friends. Later on, groom meets bride, falls in love, and proposes. New running joke is that the best man is very disappointed that the groom is marrying someone else. At the wedding, the officiant asks if anyone objects. Best man objects. Officiant quickly overrules the objection. It was planned, and the bride thought it was a funny way to acknowledge the super close friendship between the groom and the best man. Didn't result in anyone being kicked out or awkwardness. Fun and surprisingly appropriate. I was at an outdoor ceremony once with a storm coming in. The pastor was trying to move things along so that we wouldn't get caught in the rain. The reception was indoors. He asked if anyone knows of any objection, and instantly there was a loud clap of thunder. To his credit, the pastor just paused a moment and then said, "Anyone else? Alright, in that case," and finished the ceremony. Only once, but it was non-romantic. The father of the bride had been pretty absent after her parents' divorce. He had remarried and gotten into the Christian Science religion, and they were both pretty terrible. The new wife was not invited to my friend's wedding, but the father came, and it seemed like he was there to be supportive. He stood up during vows and proclaimed my friend was a B-word just like her mother, and the groom should get out while you can because she's a soul-leeching succubus. Not the worst wedding I ever went to. Went to a coworker's wedding and the maid of honor objected and admitted to being the other woman and that the groom had been cheating with her for months. The bride left in tears and the groom immediately tried to get with the maid of honor, but she told him she wasn't going to hurt the bride further and that he needed to screw off. The bride is doing much better and is now a manager here, and I haven't heard from the groom in over a year. The maid of honor and bride are on speaking terms, but I don't think their relationship is ever going to be what it used to be. I saw it nearly happen at my uncle's wedding. A friend of theirs got too drunk, and when they said, "Speak now," he smiled and started to stand up. My mother grabbed him by his hair and sat him back down by force. When I was 13, we went to my second cousin's wedding. Everything's going great. They even got past the speak now or forever hold your peace part. They wrote their own vows. But before my second cousin's fiance/wife could even begin her vows, his son got up and announced to the entire room that she was cheating on his dad with her drug dealer, and he couldn't let his dad marry her. My second cousin yelled at his son to either sit down or leave. The son left. My second cousin married her anyways, and 5 years and 1 baby later, he finds out it was true, and they separated, but were too tweaked out to be able to afford a divorce. Finally, he got married a third time, but before he could get married, his third now ex-wife had to pay for their divorce. This wedding had no objections. They moved to Missouri, and this time instead of separating or asking for a divorce, he decided he didn't want to be married anymore and just moved back to Cali to get back together with his second ex-wife. Yeah, family dinners are a little awkward. It was at my wedding that we had at my grandmother's house, who lives in the country next to a cattle farm. The cows didn't make a peep until that moment, and one finally went moo. We all laughed and continued, but it was a funny moment about my wedding. About 5 years ago, a coworker of mine invited all of us to his wedding. He was a great guy, but none of us had ever met his wife. We'd seen pictures of her, and he always said nothing but good things of her. Fast forward to the wedding. It was an incredibly nice one. Looks like they paid quite a bit for it. Everything was going smooth, and I was having fun, and assumed everyone else was as well. Anyway, now they're both at the altar or whatever, looking deeply into each other's eyes and smiling. And when that line comes of "speak now or forever hold your peace," I get anxious, but nothing ever happens. So, right as soon as the anxiousness fades away, the bride's mother stood up and objected. Blurted out some crap about how she doesn't want to continue their family with a man like him. He was black and she was white. The bride cried and ran off. The wedding went silent. Bride's dad took the mom and ran after the bride. The groom stood there, incredibly awkward. He may or may not have achieved actually leaving his body. Anyway, the groomsmen took him away. I left because it was too weird. Apparently the reception went on. They did not get married that day, but ended up together anyway privately. And surprisingly, work wasn't weird. He laughed about it and they're happily married. A wedding I was at, a guy got up and pledged his undying love for the bride, followed by 4 or 5 others objecting for various reasons, including one guy's love for the groom. By the second or third objection though, it was clear that the whole thing was a clever ruse. I found out later that it was all set up by the bride as a prank on the unsuspecting groom and family and friends. It was pretty hilarious. My wife dragged me to a wedding that I did not want to be at years ago, but I'm forever grateful that she did, because I was able to witness one of the greatest spectacles of human drama that has ever taken place. This was like an episode of Jerry Springer mixed with Cops. The bride's lover spoke up at that moment and yelled, "I'll be goddamned if I'm gonna keep my mouth shut and let you steal my woman." This deranged old redneck proceeds to come at the groom with a pistol, threatening to shoot him if he doesn't give her up. It wasn't a huge wedding, maybe 40 or so people, but every single one of them went screaming and running, and maybe 2 people stayed and called the cops. I grabbed my wife's hands and we retreated outside to watch the rest of the scene unfold from the church window. The groom's dad interrupted the wedding to ask the bride's father whether or not she was truly a virgin. Then he went on about how he didn't know anything of the wedding and blah blah blah. Truly weird and embarrassing. I went to a wedding when I was 5. It was between my older brother and his fiancée. Anyways, they said the whole speak now spiel, and right before he was done, little 5-year-old me said, "I object!" And everyone turned to me. I was dead silent because I didn't know what happened. My dad asked me, "Well, why do you object?" And I said, "I wanted to know what would happen if I did." And I was promptly seated. At my own wedding, but not in the traditional way. We were getting married along a river at the end of summer, and tons of wakeboarders and boats were out. I was a ball of nerves, and the ceremony felt so serious, when all of a sudden some dude bro on a boat blasting music screamed, "Don't do it, bro!" and sped off. It was actually hilarious and made the rest of the ceremony a lot more fun. My husband and I cracked up, even though his brothers looked like they were about to jump in the river after the guy. No objections were made, unfortunately, but back when I worked in a hotel a few years ago, I got to witness a very interesting wedding, where maybe someone should have objected. In preparation, we had to ensure we'd ordered enough blue WKD in, as this was the groom's drink of choice. First red flag. The whole wedding took place in the hotel. The function room also hosted the ceremony, so we started pretty early that day. Before the ceremony, the bride had taken 3 bottles of wine up to her room while she was getting ready, and was clearly tipsy before the wedding started, but seemed to act sober enough that whoever was conducting the ceremony was none the wiser. The ceremony seemed normal, but I was prepping the bar, so wouldn't have known either way. As it ends, all the guests flood out for drinks, whilst we changed the function room and set out the tables for the sit-down meal. The guests were really rough, rub some dirt on it type people, to put it politely. I already knew one of them as he'd been in the hotel before, acting like a total jerk when I told him the bar was closed and I wouldn't be serving him. However, he was being especially polite to me this time, as it was clear his date for the wedding was definitely not the same girl he was in with just a few weeks ago, who I suspected was a paid acquaintance. Before the meal even began, we were starting to worry if we'd have enough alcohol. These people drank like fish, but we managed to get them all seated and fed, and everyone is being friendly and well behaved. As the night goes on, the bride is slowly becoming so drunk she can barely stand, and has changed from her wedding dress into a very scant pink negligee with a tutu skirt. She's also given up on using the bathroom, so she loudly announces she will be relying solely upon nature wheeze from this point on. Before midnight, we were nearly totally out of spirits. The guests are ordering shots every round. I tried to deny service, but my manager was having none of it, and as the hotel was struggling, they wanted to make as much money as possible. They've drank us out of almost everything. Blue WKDs are long gone, but the groom has a lovely blue smile at this point. After the bride finally gives up trying to shoot disgusting liquors that have likely been sitting there since the hotel was built, they head to the dance floor. The party starts winding down and it's time for the last dance. But the bride decides she'd prefer to have this with a male wedding guest, which really peeves off the groom. She then loudly announces she'll be throwing an after party in their suite and everyone is invited in the hot tub. Funnily enough, the groom isn't thrilled and kicks off. Another member of staff manages to calm everyone down and convinces the DJ to play the last dance song once more before he leaves, and the groom agrees. Everyone starts packing up and the bride comes back from her room in her third outfit of the night, a nice gray stained tracksuit. She's adamant she wants another cigarette before bed. God knows how many packs she went through that day. Especially sad considering the money for the wedding came from her parents' inheritance who both died of cancer. She can't find a lighter and becomes irate, screaming at the groom for one. The groom claims he doesn't have one, but not taking no for an answer, she rifles through his pockets and finds one. Holding it aloft, she screams at him that he's a liar and slaps him clean across the face. The groom, obviously not having enjoyed this, returns the favor and punches her in the face. The best man spots this and leaps across the sofa and tackles the groom to the floor. They're now having a full-on fist fight while the bride sobs incoherently. I try and get out of the way as I'm being trampled by Mr. WKD and his scummy friend. My supervisor storms in saying he found coke in the bathroom and the police are on their way. The best man is off like a robber's dog and the groom stands there stunned and then follows his new wife into the function room. We then hear screaming and shouting from that room and the bride has picked up a chair and launched it at her husband and was now holding a second one trying to attack him with it. At this point, it's about 2 a.m. and I am royally done with the day. My mom is waiting for me outside, so I grab my bag and head off, giving my supervisor strict instructions to tell me exactly how this ends when I'm back for my next shift. I pass a riot van of police officers on the way out the door, direct them to the drama, and go home. Next shift, I'm informed that an ambulance arrived shortly after the police. The groom was taken to the hospital after sustaining a head injury, but he did a runner from the paramedics when he got to the hospital. The bride stayed at the hotel and, to console herself, spent the night with the male wedding guest she danced with. They left together in the morning and a week later announced on Facebook she was in a new relationship with him. The guy ended up objecting kind of late. It was right before the bride and groom kissed. The man who objected told the bride that the groom was marrying her for the wrong reasons. There was a little bit of tussle between the security guards and the objector, but there is a happy ending to this story. A dragon showed up and ate Lord Farquaad. Then Shrek and Fiona lived happily ever after. I was a best man at a wedding, and the groom's older sister decided to play a joke and stood up and said, "I object." Groom's mother stood up, slapped her, told her this was an inappropriate joke, and told her to go home. This mother still refuses to talk to her daughter 4 years later. I was at an Orthodox Jewish wedding with a ceremony where they read a contract and recite 7 blessings. The groom's dad pinched his son's butt at a most solemn moment, causing him to shriek loudly into a silent audience of 400. The bride saw and snorted loudly. They also publicly kissed after the ceremony, which was a huge scandal. To be fair, I didn't witness this, but it happened to my parents. My mom invited an ex she was still rather close with to her wedding, and he stood up and yelled, "I object." Little did everyone at the wedding know, my dad had gotten rather close with him and paid him to stand up and object, just for the laughs, and he burst out laughing. My mom didn't find it as funny, and it really started their marriage off on the right foot. Not quite the speak now part, but you'll see. A friend of mine was getting married in the park under the trees because both of them were nature people and the groom had a dog that went everywhere with him that wasn't allowed in any church. Because dog, despite being well trained and quiet. There were some rows of chairs with lots of people filling them, including groom's mother who was sitting with his dog. Bride and groom were at the front with the officiant. Officiant begins. Officiant comes to the part where he says, "Do you take?" And groom's dog, Shadow, begins to howl a loud, long, mournful howl. Everyone laughed. Officiant started the question again. Loud, long, mournful howl again. Everyone laughed. The groom told Shadow to come to the front. Shadow ran up, stood directly in between the bride and groom, and the officiant started again. Not a peep from Shadow. Her vows, his vows. Officiant looked at Shadow and asked, "Shadow, do you take the bride and groom to be your lawfully wedded parents?" Shadow barked one single bark. Officiant concluded the ceremony, everyone cheered and clapped, and Shadow barked 3 times, the only time that he's made any sounds. Not kidding. Beautiful dog, too. So, I'm attending this ultra-chill beach wedding in small-town Canada. I don't know anyone because it was my ex-step-aunts, so my brother's family that I never see. It was fun anyways. The bride flew in on a seaplane and all the chairs were set up on the sand. Anyways, the groom is from Trinidad and Tobago, so all his relatives traveled a long way and had cool accents. There was a party before and we were all a little tipsy. So, as the ceremony progresses, everyone's watching, getting teary-eyed from the vows, and then the line comes. Any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony? Speak now. Nobody expected this, but the father of the groom gets up flailing and a collective gasp followed by silence overtakes this tiny venue. We're all waiting with bated breath, but he's just standing there with glassy eyes. Turns out he was baked. This 70-plus man in a suit and dreads laughs and says, "No, I kid. And the whole spirit of the audience cheers up as he sits back down. Rest of the reception, people are going up to him saying, "Good one," or scolding him. It was a really great night though. Best wedding I've been to. I attended a wedding as a guest of a family member, and when the pastor said that, the doors busted open to the sanctuary and a man appeared and started to say, "I do." But 2 huge ushers, one who was my date, quickly grabbed the guy before he could say anything but, They grabbed him under the arms and literally lifted him up off the floor and carried him out. The wedding continued as normal. Turned out the guy was the ex of the bride. Strangest sight I ever saw. I once went to a wedding where both families were Irish. My girlfriend knew them, but I didn't. At the ceremony, the groom's ex-wife started shouting and was gently directed outside. I couldn't hear what she said. The reception was amazing. Nice venue and all, but a bunch of guests had brought their own instruments and just started jamming what I can only describe as a genuine Irish jig. This went on for hours and remains a lasting memory of oral beauty. But I digress. There was a lot of booze. There was no responsible serving of alcohol, and I'm certain it was by design. At some point, I used the men's room and was curious if I'd just seen the groom in a stall, door open, with someone who was not the bride. I didn't know these people and it might have just been someone else, so I said nothing. Sometime later, and the girlfriend states seriously, "We should get going now." Yeah, sure. We grab our stuff and head downstairs. I see the suspicious fellow again in the stairwell, going to absolute town on this same lady. My girlfriend grabs my arm tightly and keeps walking past, mumbles a thank you for the invite. I just smile and follow cause it's all weird. Yeah, that was the groom, octopusing his ex-wife, at his own wedding to another woman. The bride genuinely seemed like a gem. The look that woman gave us as we passed was this smugly dominant, "I always get what I want, hell yeah," drunk as hell look. Wow. They had some reasonable bubbly in a tub for people to take home. And who would know or care if we horked a few extras? I got it all explained to me after we were in a cab and well on our way home. I never got a follow-up on that story, but 10 out of 10 on the music. Would tag along again to an Irish wedding.
What hobby is an immediate red flag? Those people who post prank videos on social media. I know someone who does this and it's absolutely a red flag. Same goes for people who base their entire social media presence off getting views and likes. For some reason, I forgot these people exist in the wild. They shop, drive, and are just out and about. Scary stuff. I always assumed people who did this would be normal in real life, but the person who I know who does this type of thing does a lot of the obviously staged and gimmicky videos, which are super cringy. You might expect them to be attention-seeking, but it's actually worse. It's more so that everything is an opportunity for content. And it's like a switch they cannot turn off. There is zero living in the moment. Not to mention major social climbing and obsessing over how many people with blue check marks follow them. Absolute clout chaser. Every person they met, they immediately ask for their Instagram handle because every person they meet is an opportunity to gain a follower. This person is entitled and only sees people for what they can get out of them or use them for. They're very manipulative and obsessed with their image. This using people mentality carried over to personal relationships. In my case, the person I knew was having a full-blown affair with someone they knew that was married, and said that they simply didn't care if they were being a bad person. We're not friends anymore. My husband's best friend from college is a YouTuber who has 800,000 subscribers. Used to be a really cool guy, but if it doesn't create content for him, it's not a priority. He bailed on our wedding last minute. He was supposed to be a groomsman to go do some stupid video with another famous YouTuber. Definitely a red flag. The constant drive for likes and subscribers is toxic and gross. We all graduated to college over a decade ago, and the dude still acts like he's 19 years old. It's kinda sad. At first, we really respected him for blazing his own trail and doing his own thing, and getting out of our hometown, but he's just like every other douchebag influencer on Instagram now. Well, this kinda hits close to home as someone who is a YouTuber. I will say, over the years, I have caught myself getting swooped up in the content life and chasing the numbers, but I don't think I've ever done it at the expense of someone else. I absolutely hate prank YouTubers and met plenty of clout chasing creators as well. These posts were completely accurate about a decent number of creators in this space. Posting everything, and I mean every single thing, on social media. Knew this one dude from work that did this crap all the time. It was annoying as hell. Unfriended him when I was scrolling through and saw that he posted a selfie of himself on the toilet and used the caption to say, "Poopin'." Animal fighting, dog fighting, bird fighting, using dogs to kill cattle, wanting to see an animal kill another animal at your own amusement, non-documentary of course, seems like a big red flag to me. What about roaming the world unsupervised as a preteen, capturing wild animals in small enclosures, accosting passerbys, and demanding that they use their animals to fight your animals? Pikachu, I choose you! Wasting your time arguing with random people on the internet, especially if it's baiting. Well, I disagree. Stalking women and collecting their photos on a mural. That's oddly specific. Oh boy, this one guy, friend of a friend, wannabe photographer. Our friend in common approached me asking if I wanted to do a photo shoot with her. I agreed because I thought it would be fun, and I met him before in social settings. They weren't unclothed or anything. It was all very artsy and not sexy. One thing I found odd was that he asked to do a few headshots afterwards. They had nothing to do with the photos that we had been taking, but I didn't say anything. Fast forward a few months, and the guy and I got closer. Platonic, I was already dating my current partner. He invites me over to look at some footage that he recorded for a project I was doing. I got into his house, everything was normal for a bit. Well, we were talking about my project, and while doing so, he walked over to his kitchen, and I followed him absentmindedly while chatting. Then I stopped dead in my tracks. He had headshots of maybe 25 different girls taped to his fridge. Mine among them. Some had little marks made with markers. I recognized 2 of his exes and a girl I knew he had cheated on his last girlfriend with amongst one of the marks. He noticed I stopped and turned around. He didn't really say anything about it. I snatched my photo and my friend's off the fridge and left. Later, a guy that knew him confessed to me and my friend that the guy had essentially a hit list of girls he wanted to hook up with. He lived in a small town, so most of the girls he wanted got pictures taken by him. It's been a few years now, and from time to time I remember the dread I felt looking at those pictures, with him just standing a few feet away. I felt like I was in a horror movie. This sounds kind of like a setup for one of those stories where he ends up killing everyone that he hooked up with, and they end up finding that he has this box filled with little resealable bags where he puts locks of their hair, or like toenails or something. I don't have any friends that are creepy as that guy in this post, but this story did unlock a memory of mine from a time when a former friend of mine used my phone to search up a girl we met at our job. He ended up saving a bikini pic of this girl and sent it to himself. I would find this out later when my girlfriend at the time was using my phone, and while we were driving, she questioned why I had a bikini pic of a hot girl saved in my photos. As you might assume, this started a huge fight, and there was no way my girlfriend was going to believe my friend was the reason I had this photo. You still suck to this day, Dave. Saw this post yesterday about a guy that uses real mouse hearts and testicles to place them in clear resin cast of Lego men. I don't know what that is, but it's a red flag. Adopting too many kids or animals, especially when you can't afford them. One word, gambling. Casino dealer here, it's almost never a hobby. One of my peers who had a successful career in the medical industry started playing poker religiously a couple years ago, completely out of the blue. As soon as he wakes up, he starts gambling on multiple applications on his phone. He plays every evening, whether it's with friends or just random people. He started with no to low stakes and has worked his way up to higher and higher stake games. He used to be interested in live music, art, gaming, and he would hang out with friends when gambling wasn't involved. He had to move back in with his parents and stop buying herb, a 24/7 habit he had since he was 10 or 12. Not sure if that was related to his addiction of poker, but he won't say why he had to give up so much recently. But still, all he talks about now is when he's going to the casino next. From living in Vegas, I see a pattern of people having bad poker nights and then going to less skill-oriented games to make the money back. A $200 loss can become a $5,000 loss in a few minutes. I used to work at a slot machine casino. It's exactly how you said in that last sentence. Same guest would come every day and complain about the same damn thing. How much money they lost in the last couple of days. Granted, it is smaller amounts than $5,000, but the fact that they complained and still came back the next day was pretty alarming to me. Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to interfere or suggest a break from the casino, unless they came to us or that we saw a crazy change in their behavior. Even worse, we weren't allowed to even talk to them much because our boss said that we were interfering with their stay. It's sad that something that's literally made to be fun is sometimes someone's only income or debt. You see people fade away spiritually and physically, and you can't do anything about it because the company wants money. Family vlogging. They completely violate children's privacy. Using kids to shore up your own online presence is not okay. There are parents that are pimping their kids on OnlyFans, Patreon, etc. I watched 2 videos the other day exposing people that can buy exclusive picture sets of several 8 to 14-year-old girls who are prominent on TikTok via parent-run accounts. They showed the metrics and their viewers and buyers were like 75% male, between the ages of 23 to 47. Freaking insane. The pictures were blurred in the expose, of course, but the pictures were said to be sexy bikini pics of little tween and teen girls. Disgusting crap. As a person with a kid who didn't even really want kids even, it absolutely blows my mind how easily some people exploit their own children. Like, that is your baby. How screwed in the head do you have to be to put money over their privacy, safety, and dignity of your child? I don't even post regularly innocent family photos of my kid on social media. Outside of like sending direct snaps to my dad or uncle, I'm far too paranoid about the kind of people that might see them. Even though I'd like to think I'm not friends with anyone that would look at my daughter in a predatory way. Damn, that just makes me so freaking angry. When you have a kid, your entire purpose for the remainder of your life is raising them to be the best version of themselves they can be, and protecting them from evils of the world best you can, not sacrificing them to those evils to make a quick buck. Holy crap. Much like prank YouTubers, I've never really been a fan of family vloggers. I've seen a couple, even met Shay Carl once at a convention and he made a video for my sister. Some can be nice people, but I can't ever shake the feeling that there are so many people that want to see other people's kids. Like, scripted television is one thing, but reality TV and online videos that involve kids' daily lives is just weird to me. Collecting blood slides. My friend had one next to his table next to his AC unit. When I asked him about it, he gave me this weird smile and claimed it was for work. I've never had beers with him since. Surprise, mother. If a person is preoccupied with their social media and they don't actually live and communicate in the moment, it's fine if you can communicate about it and make arrangements, but I'm not dating a person in a 3-way relationship with Mark Zuckerberg. I would totally be fine with a person that has a heavy social media presence for work, but I would want to be able to set boundaries that work for both of us on it. Yeah, my sister-in-law talks about influencers as if they're her friends IRL. I can't have a conversation without her taking her phone out and showing me someone she followed before they got famous. It's exhausting and honestly awful to talk with her. Her husband, my brother, has suggested she see a counselor about it and believes she genuinely thinks in her head that she knows these people. That, my friends, is what we call textbook parasocial relationships. On a date, casually thinking, well, I guess there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? 4. What? There's 4 ways to skin a cat. Influencing. Back in 1990, we had them. They were called commercials, then infomercials, then the crap became ridiculous. It's such a disturbing phenomena. Was in line at a touristy ice cream shop near me, and the line was probably 20 people deep. 3 women approached the counter and asked for samples of various kinds. It was their turn in line, so fine. Next thing you know, one whips out her cell phone and starts making a live video on how they just discovered this place. They spent the next 2 minutes sucking their samples off mini spoons for their fans. People were still waiting in line and we were just like, get out of the way. They never actually ordered anything. For me, these women epitomize idiocy of influencing. They never actually discover anything, but pretend they're the first person to experience things. It's so fake. Yeah, I hate these types of influencers because 1, they do come off as fake, but most importantly, 2, they ruin a lot of awesome places. Like, I don't like the idea of gatekeeping, but sometimes we should gatekeep certain places. And I don't just mean chill, delicious food spots. TikTok and Instagram have definitely ruined a bunch of cool nature spots because this location is a great place for your next photo shoot. Ugh. Someone reading a ton of philosophy can easily be a very good sign, or a massive red flag depending on what specifically they're reading so much of. Shrines to people. When I first met my now late significant other, my son wanted to be sure he wasn't a killer and protect me. We were literally neighbors, so one day we walked to his house and my son said, "Let me see you don't have any pictures of my mom with X's on them." He thought my son meant pictures of his exes. Nope, my kid just wanted to be sure that there was no shrine of me somewhere with my face crossed out with Sharpie markers. Running an MLM or being an admin, aka dictator, of a local area Facebook group. Dude, I'm one of the mods for our local Facebook gardening group. So much drama in what I thought was a peaceful, calming hobby. Yeah, I see a lot of dictators in a few groups I've been in, but I feel like it's probably due to how crappy the members of the group are, most of the time, rather than them actually wanting to be jerks. I have dated 2 horse girls in my life, and they both ended up very similarly. Arguing with strangers on the internet. Not like usual discussions or anything, just taunting people because you're bored. My mother does this, goes on Facebook pages specifically geared towards things she dislikes, messages them big, long, nasty grams, then blocks them before they can fight back. And yes, my mother is freaking exhausting. This post is funny because I actually made it a goal this year to stop engaging with ridiculous people on the internet. I still have conversations with people, but the moment name calling or belittling begins to happen, I'm out. My mute and block buttons are also used now because I don't care if it's a sign that the other person won the argument if I use it. If you feel validation from winning an argument online, that says more about you than it does me. So I have no problem letting people think that. Kid beauty pageants. I dated a girl in LA who had taken part in beauty pageants going back to when she was a kid. She had a good amount of success with it, and she was most certainly a looker. But man, she was completely crippled with anxiety. Those pageants freaking mess girls up that start young. There's that famous gif of that girl giving a mischievous double chin smile. She ended herself at the age of 16 pretty recently. Those insane pageant moms are living vicariously through their daughters, the way belligerent sports dads live vicariously through their sons at baseball games. Not that it's an excuse for their behavior, but I think the pageant moms and sports dads have massive insecurities about living up to the conventional standards of femininity and masculinity, or are in denial about their own internal insecurities. So they become obsessed with forcing their kids to live up to an ideal they couldn't obtain themselves. And a lot of those kids also aren't going to be able to either, or even want to live up to these incredibly specific standards of masculinity and femininity. I'm pretty sure beauty pageants for little girls and teens just simply shouldn't be a thing. I remember reading an article about a girl that won a beauty pageant, and then it was revealed that she made a spicy video so she would be able to pay for the cost of that pageant. I think they stripped her of the title, and I don't know what happened to her after that. Watching gore or sending gore videos to their friends. I had a roommate like this. He started watching all kinds of gore and pain Olympic videos. It gave him some sort of superiority complex since he became desensitized to gore, and he would always try to get me to watch those videos with him. Likely so I would be grossed out and he wouldn't, as some sort of alpha move or something. Fast forward a month and I found our other roommate lying in a pool of blood on the bathroom floor, barely conscious. Where was our super alpha Chad roommate at the time? He ran out of the room and slept at the neighbors, leaving me to keep our roommate awake while the paramedics showed up and eventually mop up all the blood too. The one roommate lived, and the last I heard, he's doing well. The other guy, he can go screw himself. I'd make a bet that that guy was an average Joe Rogan listener. What about lewd anime figures? I get liking anime, but when your room is full of jailbait anime girls in bathing suits and lewd poses, there's something that's not so chill going on there. Shopping at conventions with the "I have to be able to shamelessly walk into my parents' house with it" rule is surprisingly challenging. There's always so much fun when your previously G-rated, or so far PG-rated, fandom suddenly sprouts a niche offshoot which has a scantily clad anime girl as a central figure. Because you just know that if you ever mention the fandom to anyone ever again, they'll look it up and the first result will be one of those pictures. I used to live in Japan and we would semi-regularly end up at the mall for some food, break a bill, and get change. In Japan, the lowest paper note is about $10. So all the coins would go to ice cream, then with whatever I had left, I would take it to the arcade and try to win the lewdest, crudest anime waifu figure I could. One of my friends thought I actually wanted one and got me a Nami figure as a gift. I wasn't going to not display it, but it was hilarious to explain what the story was every time somebody new came to my house. I kind of want to give my 2 cents on this topic because there was a lot of people going back and forth in the comments on this one. For full transparency, I'm a weeb and I would totally buy one of those lewd figures because no joke, the quality and design of some of those things are insane. They just so happen to be lewd. But I do find it funny that people would consider it a red flag, but a house full of alcoholic paraphernalia, substance paraphernalia, or even weapons wouldn't get as questioned as much as lewd paraphernalia. But I will say, if like a majority of someone's collectibles are these figures and they're lolly based, then I'd say red flag. If their identity is surrounded by Disney, sorry, I said it. I had a cousin who engineered a massive split in the extended family by having her wedding at a Disney World in Florida. She expected everyone to fly there from around the country and stay at the resort itself. A bunch of the family members opted out entirely because of how expensive it was. She ended up feuding with even the family members that did show up but ended up staying at cheaper places in Orlando. I was fortunate enough to be too distant of a relative to even get an invite. I remember seeing an I Am the Jerk post where a bride and groom were both into Disney, so they convinced everyone to fly out to their wedding at Disney and then proceeded to not provide food or drinks for anyone. Instead, they paid like $3,000, it may have been more, I can't remember, to have a guy in a Mickey costume be at their wedding and force their guests to pay for the expensive food/drinks from nearby vendors out of pocket. They were rightly judged. I'd like to add that if a person's personality is centered around any one thing, it's a red flag. Gun bros, substance heads, car people, foodies. Basically, if all you can talk about is one subject and nothing else, that's totally a red flag. Crypto, NFTs, and listening to Andrew Tate. Adults who are really into experiencing child-oriented entertainment in public. The 40-something-year-old guy hanging around Chuck E. Cheese by himself. Not necessarily the odd bird who collects kids' toys, although that is a bit strange to me too. Okay, I'm feeling personally attacked from all the people coming after toys. First off, they're collectibles. But in all seriousness, I think people enjoy collecting things from their childhood or experiencing things from their childhood because it was a simpler time. Because let's be real, when you have to really look at the world and notice how everything is so messed up, it's nice to just go home to things that make you feel nice.
Fast food workers, what should we never order from you? At Starbucks, don't order something from the secret menu. We don't know what a snickerdoodle frappuccino is, as it's not a menu item. Employees would be more than happy to make you a drink if you just explain the recipe rather than the name of it. I'll make you diabetes in a cup if you just tell me what you want in there. Just don't get mad at me for not knowing a whole menu customers created. Salads from DQ are a ripoff. They just recently downsized them while changing the bowl to make it look like the same amount. Over $5 for 3 ounces of old lettuce, cabbage, carrots, and even older grilled chicken. I used to work at Chipotle and never, ever order the tacos. You get less than half the regular portions. Instead, order a bowl with whatever you want in it, then ask for the taco shells, hard or soft, on the side. When I was there, the shells were free to get on the side. I used to work at 7-Eleven, so I'm gonna say any of the taquitos or hot dogs around midnight up through about 4 or 5 a.m. Around midnight, you can be almost assured that these are now high mileage. The hot dog might have more miles than your car. If you're really short on time, don't count on chicken tenders or grilled chicken sandwiches or salads being made quickly at Burger King. I remember that the tenders took forever to cook, and we didn't really make them that often, so most times they were made to order. Same for the grilled chicken. I work at Buffalo Wild Wings. Don't get anything other than the wings. That's the only quality thing there. Everything else is frozen. I worked at an Auntie Anne's Pretzels, and typically at these, there's a window and people can see you rolling the pretzels. I want to point out for us that it was more sanitary to not use gloves over using them. We'd get customers complain about it, but it's actually written in our rules that we don't have to use them. It's perceived to be cleaner. When we didn't use them, we washed our hands much more often, and it didn't matter anyway because bacteria got killed off in the 600-degree Fahrenheit ovens. From after the oven and onwards, no hands are involved, and you're using tongs to transfer product around to pretzel sleeves. The only thing I can say is that sometimes the pretzel dogs or hot dogs can be icky when you don't order one fresh. When they sit in the warmer, they shrivel up and get all chewy. If you see something on the menu and can't find at least 1 or 2 other items that the ingredients could be used in, don't order it. For example, my restaurant has a pulled pork sandwich. We don't use the pork for anything else. Since it's not ordered too frequently, it's not fresh, and the product you're eating might be days or weeks old. It's not going to get you sick, but it definitely won't be as fresh as the other things on the menu. I worked at a Japanese casual fast food restaurant, and we had this thing called a volcano roll. It cost $7.25. A California roll there cost $3.75. The volcano roll was a Cali roll cut in the shape of a triangle and topped with spicy mayo that had been heated up, with about 10 cents worth of fish. Literally just a few bits. You're much better off ordering a Cali roll and paying the extra 50 cents for the spicy mayo on the side and asking them to heat it up. I had one guy come in with his girlfriend and ordered a volcano roll, and when served in the restaurant, unless they ask us, we put it on top so it looked nice, like a volcano. When I brought it over, he was like,
"Oh, I didn't know you guys put the sauce on. I've only gotten it for pickup and the sauce is always on the side. I don't really like it. Could you bring me one without one?"
I tried not to laugh and said sure. I went back and the sushi chef asked what was wrong. I told him that he didn't like the sauce and wanted one without it. He laughed and said all right, so he took a Cali roll, cut it up, and put it on a plate. I brought it back to the guy and he was super pumped. Basically, this guy paid $7.25 for a roll that would have cost him $3.75, and me and the sushi chef got to split a free volcano roll. Do movie theaters count? I'd say pretty much everything is fair game unless your manager is a jerk. We rotate hot dogs regularly, throw out the ones that have expired, and put new ones out. Nachos can get pretty iffy if the day's been slow. Sometimes we'll have the same nachos in a warmer that have been there since that morning. Jimmy John's. If you're trying to order a healthy option, don't order the Gourmet Veggie Club. It's the second highest calorie sandwich behind something called the Gargantuan. 8 slices of provolone cheese will do that. I used to work at McDonald's. There have been some McDonald's life hacks going around the internet for a few years now. Please don't do any of them because then one or both of the following will happen. 1, your order will take forever. Yes, I get that you want fresh fries, but are you really willing to wait the 4 minutes for that? And if you are, do you promise not to complain about the wait? Or number 2, you'll be upcharged for certain ingredients, like the poor man's Big Mac, a McDouble with mac sauce and shredded lettuce. We upcharge you 30 cents for the mac sauce and 20 to 30 cents for the shredded lettuce. I used to work at Boston Market. They're pretty good. The only thing I can think of is that any chicken that isn't on the bone, sandwich, pot pie, etc., is day-old or more leftover chicken. Anything off of a hidden menu. Most people working don't know how to make it, and you'll probably receive a giant glob of assorted ingredients on a bun. Chick-fil-A. Don't order grilled foods if you're gluten-free. While technically gluten-free, a lot of cross-contamination can occur. Be specific to be safe. Oh, and don't order a standard salad at night. It was probably made that morning. Request something else on it and it'll be fresh. My brother's girlfriend used to work at Wendy's, and a saying there about fries was, "They aren't old until they're sold." Don't order any type of fish. I work in a popular fast food place near the ocean, and to make our fish, we grind up all the remains. Eyes, fins, scales, hearts, lungs, things like that, and just make them into fried patties. Ex-Sonic employee here. Don't order steak or grilled chicken ever. Don't get the new ultimate chicken sandwiches. They're insanely overpriced, and the normal crispy chicken sandwiches taste way better anyway. The time to get fresh food is when the place is busy, as they're less likely to give you something that's been in hold for an hour, or their hold will continually be fresh. If there's a sale going on for something like half-priced hot dogs or half-priced burgers, only order a reasonable amount if you want quality. If someone orders 20 burgers in the middle of a rush on half-price burger day, we don't care. We'll throw that together so sloppily you'll barely be able to call it a burger. This doesn't apply to half-price corn dogs, however, as we're able to just make a bunch at a time anyway. Don't get the chili. It comes in a bag, gets warmed up in a metal tub, and then sits for 10 hours until we run out and replace it. It's also just not very good to begin with. Try the seasoned popcorn chicken. The barbecue and garlic parmesan flavors are actually really good. If you're allergic to any kinds of foods, be wary. Onions are in the same dressing station as the rest of the condiments, and cross-contamination is not our problem. The same goes for peanuts with the shakes. If you're getting a milkshake, be aware that there are 3 different kinds, and therefore 3 different prices. There's the normal shakes, the master shakes, and the new creamier shakes. The creamier shakes are actually good, just don't get the lavender one. And if you're getting a slushie, the same thing applies, only it's normal slush, candy slush, and real fruit slush. If you're at a stall and the card reader isn't working, just wait for the car hop to come out and give them your card. Don't call in again to ask why the card reader isn't working. And don't hit on the car hops. It's a crappy job and they have to put a smile on whenever they have to deal with you. They're not smiling because they like you, and if they do want to flirt with you for whatever reason, they'll make it very clear. Sonics are dirty as well, at least in the region where I worked. We were continually understaffed and expected to run the entire place with a small crew and clean. We do the best we can, but we don't get paid enough to stay after our shift and work off the clock cleaning up. It sucks, but that's the way it goes. When I used to work there in Canada, McDonald's grilled chicken could sit there for a long time. So can the fillet of fish. Usually they're on top of it, but things happen. Don't be afraid to order those fresh if you're worried it might be stale. Same with regular burger patties. They take like 40 seconds, it's no big deal. I've done a 4-hour shift and just forgot to throw out the old grilled chicken and make new ones because no one ordered it, and it had already went past the timer when I got there, so there was no beeping to remind me. It sounds stupid, and it was. We're all human and humans are dumb though. What you should order is fresh grilled chicken. I used to time the grilled chicken for my breaks because it was just that good. Personally, I think the fillet of fish is disgusting at McDonald's, but that's just my opinion. Don't order anything at around the time the menu switches. Everything will be old. And there's an hour where they take the whole system down in the middle of the night. Don't know if everyone does this, but mine did. And you're gonna end up in a long line and pay only cash. I'm a general manager for Taco Bell. Order anything you like at my store. My team and I take pride in giving you quality product. All I ask in return is this. If you want 2 or more Taco 12 packs, please don't order it in the drive-thru. Come inside. I won't deny your 48 Doritos Locos Tacos, but we will all judge you. Drive-thru is meant for quick orders, not to feed your soccer team. Thanks. As someone who's worked fast food for a while, don't go through the drive-thru unless you can't avoid it. If you have all your kids buckled in and it's a hassle, then it's fine, go on through. But if you're just by yourself, try and take the extra minute it takes to get out of your car. You'll usually have your food quicker, even if you're getting it to go, and you have a better chance of not being given the crappy old fries, chicken, or meat patties. For pizza, don't order any pizza that has fresh exotic veggies, unless that joint is not selling only pizza. Exotic veggies include but aren't limited to artichokes, silver beet, broccolini, and the likes of unusual tomatoes. At Sonic, if you order only drinks, it'll get delivered faster. Also, combo meals take high priority. During a rush, don't go through the drive-thru. Ice cream takes forever to make. If we give you the wrong item or make a mistake, keep your receipt and we'll give you a free replacement meal. I work at Jimmy John's, and my answer is that everything is always fresh unless you have a terrible manager. And if that happens, corporate shuts you down immediately. Our meats are sliced in the shop and are always refrigerated. And even then, they're sliced the day before most of the time. Same with the veggies and such. The real trick is knowing how to order your sandwich and save money. The Jimmy John's menu is specifically created to squeeze money out of its customers' pockets when you don't know how to order. Subway worker here. A Veggie Delight, Kids Pack, or anything on wheat bread. The Veggie Delight doesn't have anything terribly wrong, it's just the same price as all the other subs. Seems like a waste to me. Even if you're vegetarian, there must be better options out there. For the Kids Pack, that thing is expensive. The 4-inch sandwich for your kid with 1 slice of meat costs the same as the 6-inch I could give you with a drink, with 4 slices of the same meat. The regular brown bread gets dry fast. If it's fresh, all the bread is good. Coming down to the end of the day, run from the sandpaper wheat bread. Ironically though, the bread that seems to stay freshest longest is the honey oat wheat bread. Not sure why. Things I do recommend, change your sandwich to a salad bowl. It's a pain for us to make, so I may regret this, but you get way more bang for your buck. Lastly, never order the roast chicken. It's alright, but I do guarantee there's some specialty chicken going for a cheaper price. And to be honest, all we do is add the various sauces to the roast chicken. So it's basically the same thing, just cheaper and usually with juice. And as an add-on, Subways are really good with food prep and all that. They always keep it fresh, replace things on time, and actually throw out what they shouldn't keep. Others get limited funding and have to make them stretch. A good indicator is the cookies. Every Subway bakes them fresh first thing in the morning. If you walk in and there are some that look slightly older than the others, then that's because they are. Lower your standards if you plan to visit an all-you-can-eat buffet when there aren't many people inside. The food has probably been sitting there for a while since nobody was there to eat it. I can't explain how many times I've gone to a buffet, seen nobody inside, and tasted the stale consequences of my poor judgment calls. I worked at Red Robin for a summer a few years ago. I'm not gonna lie, they were insanely particular about cleanliness, and I actually left that job with more appreciation for Red Robin than when I went in. For example, we had a health inspector come one day. My boss knew about it and didn't tell anyone. When I joked around with him about it later, he laughed and said something like, "Every day's health inspection day. My health inspection." Don't order DQ blizzards with extra sauces. Thanks to the flip it or it's free policy, this means that your now 80% liquid blizzard is almost guaranteed to just slosh out of the cup. At Pizza Hut, everything in the store is frozen when you get to us, so it's all the same quality because it's made as the order comes in. The gluten-free pizza just tastes like absolute garbage for obvious reasons. If you can avoid it, please do. Everything is fresh at Jimmy John's, minus their bread and cookies, sorta. The bread comes frozen and there's quite a process to bake it, but it's all made that day. Anything left over is sold for 50 cents a piece the next day. The cookies are frozen and just thawed, but everything else is fresh. My friend used to work at Wetherspoons, a UK pub chain, and you never want to eat their poached eggs. They come in a plastic cup and they're just popped out and microwaved. Pretty much anything in Wetherspoons is just microwaved crap other than the fish, which she was there some nights breading until 3 a.m. I work at a Domino's and I have some advice. Very rarely do we take notice of no garlic, light or extra buffalo sauce, or well or lightly done. So if you order with any of those things, keep in mind that drivers usually prepare the food and box it out of the oven. Unless specifically told, it's difficult to spot the instructions given by a customer. Personally, I would never eat the brownies, as they're all pre-made and despite being sinfully delicious, are not worth it. The wings are delicious, but usually fall under the same buffalo sauce dilemma. I recommend ordering mild wings instead of hot, as the only difference is the volume of sauce. Premium chicken is a scam. The garlic cups are not the same as what goes on the crust, which is delicious. I would drink a whole bottle if I were ready to die. And gluten-free pizzas are cut with the same pizza cutter unless specified otherwise. Never order more than 2 toppings on a thin crust. The cutter will spread the cheese and whoever prepares it will likely not bother to fix it. Never buy specialty pizzas. Make them yourself in the creator. And lastly, if you saw how the Parmesan bread bites were prepared, I don't think you'd want to eat them anymore. That being said, I make about 15 of them a day and I still eat them. For my Canadian brethren out there, ex-Tim Hortons baker here. I worked the midnight shift at a location that had a high employee turnover rate. Rightly so, as it was always understaffed and underpaid. Here's some tips. Coffee is supposed to be made fresh every 15 minutes. There should be a white marking on the pot indicating when it was last brewed. Look for the marking and make sure it's fresh. Coffee flavor deteriorates really quickly, and we don't mind making you a fresh pot, especially if we messed up and forgot to throw out an old batch. Decaf is hardly ordered in the mornings, so it's likely we'll have to brew a fresh pot or you're getting old product. If you want to order food, do it before midnight, as this is when we throw away the old donuts, buns, and bagels. They're usually sold to farmers who use them in their animal feed. Fresh donuts are usually available at 2 to 3 a.m., maybe earlier if the location is somewhere popular and not understaffed. Maybe later if the people in front are lazy liars who don't want to make food. The general consensus for drive-thru orders is don't order anything more than 4 coffees at most or 2 meals. The people on drive-thru are strictly timed and they get in trouble if they take too long. If you're ordering as a large group, please go inside. Don't make huge orders after 9 p.m. This is the time when the store is most understaffed, and all that's left is usually 1 or 2 people in front and 1 baker. If you see the baker up front or in drive-thru clad all in white, odds are the people in the front are really behind and called them off his or her routine. Forgive us if we get your order wrong and you need to repeat it once or twice. If we take a long time making your order, more than 5 minutes, we usually offer you a free cookie, but don't count on it. Ex-Olive Garden employee here. Everything is horrible for you. Ask a manager to see a nutrition menu and your jaw will drop. The butter that goes on breadsticks comes in the same jugs that motor oil comes in. Liquid form. Basically liquid cholesterol. I know you think you're healthy eating the salad and soup and bread with extra cheese, but you're not. The amount of salt in every soup is unreal. And the salad dressing even has cheese in it. Stay away from anything cream-based, Alfredo sauce, carbonara sauce, etc. Unless you enjoy gut-wrenching poops. Corporate will comp literally anything. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people walk out with twice as much stuff as anticipated, all for nothing. Not a worker, but I ordered a chicken sauce in KFC that wasn't anywhere on the menu, just on the internet. I got a cup with a little of some brown thing that looked, smelled, and tasted like the leftover from deep frying. Do you like flavored lattes? Don't order the Valencia syrup. I used it twice in a year. The bottle was dusty as heck. I don't know the shelf life of latte syrup, but it was old and dusty when I got there. I used to work at Raising Cane's. They only sell a couple things, chicken and fries, so that's always fresh. They were also super clean. I would not order anything with egg whites at IHOP though. A few years back, I went to IHOP with my then girlfriend. She saw on the menu that substituting egg whites for eggs in the omelets and stuff was an option, healthier and lower calories. Now, you have to realize when most people go to IHOP, they're not looking to be healthy. They're looking to set world record calorie and cholesterol levels. So egg whites are probably not ordered often. But my girlfriend was watching what she ate, and she's also the type to always heavily modify the menu. She almost never ordered straight off the menu. So she requests an omelet made with egg whites. The waitress seemed totally confused. In all honesty, I don't think she'd ever heard someone order that before, and she may not have even realized it was an option. She said she would check with the kitchen. She came back a couple minutes later and said the kitchen crew were looking for some egg whites. Then, about 10 minutes after that, she came back and said, "They found some egg whites, but they're going to take a while to thaw out. Do you still want them?" Most people here would say no. Not my then girlfriend. She was like, "Great, thanks." Well, suffice to say, my girlfriend ended up with the worst food poisoning I've ever seen. She was vomiting every 45 minutes for almost 2 days straight. She had to be put on an IV and prescribed this special skin gel that stopped vomiting. It was insane. In all seriousness, for a brief moment, I honestly think she considered that she might die. So the moral of the story is to not order anything at a restaurant that looks like someone never orders it. Jamba Juice here. When I worked there, 2 small 16-size cups equal 1 large power size. People would often come in and ask for their kids to get 2 small smoothies. If it's the same flavor, ask for a power size in 2 cups. Saves you more than $1. Whataburger in Texas and Southwest US area. Order everything. Haven't worked there in a decade, but unless quality has gone to the dumps, it's all worth ordering. Fast food for sure, but the kitchen should be spotless every night when it closes. You'll get diabetes, but not food sickness. Don't order the salads from Burger King. 99% of the time, the lettuce isn't washed. We also just started serving hot dogs not too long ago. They're put in the broiler just long enough to have grill marks, then we toss them in the microwave. So avoid that. Back in the day, I worked for a concessionaire at a major sports arena. NBA, concerts, things like that. The standard rule was never order a hot dog from the concession stand until after the first quarter of the game or after the main act is playing. Why? Well, at the same time, we specialized in a nasty trick called reruns. Reruns were the unsold hot dogs from the night before. When closing up the stand, we were ordered to unwrap the unsold hot dogs, peel the meat from the bun, then take the dogs back to the sink and wash the stuck bread parts off. Now, crunchy buns went in a bag, the now rinsed hot dogs went in another bag. The next day, or week if the team was going on a road trip, the same hot dogs would be brought back out, reheated, and restuffed into those same buns. Those were the ones that were served first. I don't know if this is still happening, but at the time I worked there, reruns were a way of life. Those who worked in the stands hated the practice, but management insisted. We also reran popcorn, pretzels, and ice.
Men of Reddit, what are some green flags on a first date? She listens sincerely and talks sincerely. When you find a common talking point and she genuinely adds to not only the conversation, but your view on said topic. Good conversation gets me going. My wife, who I've been with for 8 years, and I had an incredibly awkward first date for the first hour. There was physical attraction, but we were both awkward and shy. Conversation was so stale and forced that I texted a friend that it wasn't going well and I could meet in an hour. Until, for whatever reason, she asked me if I had a zombie apocalypse plan. And I did. So we nerded out together over that and other topics flowed in more naturally. We talked for 4 hours and walked from South Keys to Rideau Center in Ottawa, walking the entire 4 hours. One good shared topic can start something amazing. I have to 100% agree. A good conversation can make you a 10 in my book real quick. Looking back, the thing that should have been the biggest green flag about the woman I married was that she made just as much effort to see me as I did her. She texted me first, suggested hangout times, and came up with date ideas just as often as I did. I don't think I realized it back then, but I realize it now. When we were first dating, my wife was in law school and an hour-and-a-half drive from her house. One night a week, she would come to my house. She was temporarily living with her parents while she went to school as a single parent. We'd have a date night, she'd stay over, and she would get up at 4:30 a.m. and drive back. That was 10 years ago, and she still always makes me feel appreciated at that kind of level. I try to up my game and respond back at that same level, and I tell her that my goal in life is that she never realizes that I'm the one that got the better end of the deal when we got married. I love this, and I will say it is something that I definitely look out for when hanging out with people that I'm interested in. If I'm the one that's always making the plans or texting first, I will eventually become a ghost because I don't feel wanted. You don't realize that hours have passed while you're sitting and chatting. You sit in your car at the end of a night and talk for another hour, and realize even after one date you genuinely miss their company. Oh hell yes, this is one green flag. In fact, that's one of the things I love about my now wife. Every long drive, about 6 to 10 hours, we would have something to chat about, and as a result we would get so into our conversation that we missed our exits at least twice. At one point, we were heading to SoCal for a family event, and despite knowing the way by heart, we still managed to miss our junction exit because of our conversation. It was about K-pop and K-drama in case you were curious. Listening and reciprocating questions. I don't want to talk about myself the whole time. This isn't a job interview where I'm the employer. Ask questions about me too. Also, good manners go a long way. We accidentally showed up at the wrong restaurant. Well, I showed up at the north end of town and she showed up at the south end. She ended up coming to meet me halfway, and after dinner we talked at a park at a lake until 2 in the morning, and it felt like no time had passed. She wasn't on her phone at all. I told her that I don't kiss on the first date, just to make sure that it's not about a hookup. At the end of the night, as I was dropping her off at her car, she gave me a nervous smile and then kissed me. Then she gave me a hug and even texted me to see if I got home, as she ended up making it to her place before I got to mine. Anyways, we've been married 8 years now. I'm sorry, but I almost fell in love with your wife. That's so beautiful. Dude, girls making the first move is pretty hot, but the "did you get home safe?" that text is always wholesome. You feel comfortable talking. So simply put, yet often unattainable. She has a level of confidence, nothing crazy, but you can tell that she has an idea of what she wants. When she puts her phone away, hell of a green flag. After posting this, I saw a couple of comments come through about safety. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Do whatever you need to do to feel safe for sure. I could have been a bit clearer in the original comment and said phone is silent and she leaves it on the table, or something like that. I wanted to get across that I'd prefer her to talk with me and not people on her phone. Ain't that the truth? I understand checking messages, but when you're on it for more than 5 minutes or so, at least excuse yourself and make a phone call if it's an emergency, or if you're not enjoying the date, just say so. It's sad that being present on a date is a green flag. Yeah, it is pretty sad. I feel you always see those comments about men having such a low bar to make women happy, but people don't realize it's the same for men. We are simple creatures. When she brings the 1977 to 2011 flag of Libya to the first date, big green flag. My daughter went on a date with this guy she met on a dating app. We were worried sick, making sure she texted us her location every time she went somewhere else. She got very sick on the date and he took her to the ER, waiting for her for almost 6 hours. When she went back, he wasn't allowed to go with her. So instead, he went and got her Waffle House since she had missed dinner. She still wasn't out after 6 hours, so he sat in his car with the heat on during the Georgia summer so that her food would stay hot. When she finally got out, he drove her home with her food because he wanted to make sure that she got some rest since she was sick. They made plans to go on another date when she was feeling better. They got married 3 months ago. We love him and I officiated the ceremony. Damn, give that guy a medal for sitting in a car with his heater on during the summer. She compliments you on how you look. Such a simple thing and it goes super far. Conversation flows easily and naturally. You're able to talk about big things like religion, politics, and children without feeling like it's a potential argument. You're both laughing and relaxed the entire time and you leave the date itching for the next one. I'm with someone really special right now, and I'm such a quirky, eccentric person, and the fact that I can just be myself around her has me feeling like it's safe to fall in love. Pray for me, bros. This one is really special, and I've never felt like this before. I really hope I don't screw this up. She showed up. Dude, this is my biggest fear after a rough breakup. I finally dug myself out of a funk and matched with this girl who lived 4 hours away. This is why I believe in destiny, because my settings were not that far and neither were hers. We agreed to meet at a town 2 hours away from both of us. So I drove the 2 hours to meet her. I sat in that park for about 15 minutes absolutely terrified she wouldn't show up. Things went great. We dated for a couple of months until her psycho ex went bat crap crazy and lured her back in by what I think was poisoning his kids that she used to take care of, and when she showed up, he messed her up pretty bad until she took him back. Yeah, that took a turn and I never heard from her after that when she went to meet him, and he started texting me from her phone. Do I know if it's all true? Not really. But no one would move to another state to be with someone just to turn around and move back 2 weeks later. In conclusion, people suck. That story took a turn that I wasn't expecting because, well, the guy mentioned destiny at the start, so I figured they were going to be living happily ever after. Guess not. If you pay for a meal or anything, and she says thank you and is genuinely appreciative, a shocking, and I mean shocking, amount of women won't even say thank you when you pay for stuff on a date. Bonus points if she offers to split the check, or I don't know, if you bought the movie tickets and she gets the popcorn. Example, my now wife offered to split the bill on our first date. I declined and paid. She thanked me, then when we got a drink at the bar after, she said, "Let me get this round." That's when I knew she was a keeper. I will say an odd green flag is when you offer to pay and she doesn't get mad. I once went out with a girl who legit got upset that I offered to pay because she was an independent woman and didn't need me. It was hella odd. Lots of laughter and smiles. You don't want the date to end. She asks you questions about your life instead of what you have and how much you earn, and she genuinely seems interested. She's honest even if it's to share the less desirable side of herself or nature. She asks questions about yourself. This is a big one. Worst thing in the world is to date a narcissist. I bought opera tickets once for me and a lady because we were both into that. It's very late when we were done, so I offer, and she accepts, a lunch date so we can talk about it. The date went fine, and then she paid for it. I was a bit surprised. I'm of the belief that unless arrangements are made beforehand, payment is done by those who offered the date. She said, "You paid for the opera tickets, and I had a great time then, and now I'm not about to get greedy." They listen and are actually interested in things you have to say. They talk too, obviously, and don't expect you to entertain them, but rather has a nice conversation back and forth. No obviously expectations on food, drinks, or pay for whatever you're doing. For me, it's a big green flag when you're adamant on separate checks for the first date, because it means that they are serious and not just out for a free meal, no matter how the date goes. Honesty about your intentions is also a really big green flag for me too. Knowing if someone is possibly in for something serious with you only, or dating around to find themselves. And potentially, eventually, a nice partner helps in setting expectations on both parts. And you might find yourself great friends instead, even if things don't click. For more quick green flags for what I find myself falling for in a date, like I did with my wife, I'd say instant attraction. It's important for both parts in an intimate relationship. Can't have a long-term romantic relationship without attraction, unless you're asexual, of course. Another is having fun together. My wife is also my best friend. I still love hanging out with her after 8 years together. Intellectually compatibility. Equally smart, or in our case, equally stupid. We understand each other well, both in language and references. We argue and discuss things from similar points of understanding even when we disagree. To us, it's a cornerstone of our relationship because even when we get into fights, we can take a step back and reason to the point of understanding. We might still not agree, but at least we understand why. Similar core beliefs. Things like religion, how we look at people, how we consider kids, war, death, religion, and the meaning of life, money, career, family, etc. The big questions that shape how we go through life. They kinda need to be aligned for a long and healthy relationship. And if you find out early that they don't, you can save yourself a lot of heartache. Many people might disagree on this one, but I believe if you want a lasting relationship without one or both of you constantly having to censor/alter their views to avoid arguing, you need to have a similar core to begin with. I was sick with something, a lot of pollen where I'm from. We'd barely been talking a week on a dating website and I had mentioned my sore throat and runny nose. She asked me for my address. Being a dude, I thought nothing of it and I figured it was for a date coming up. I didn't have a car, so I figured she was trying to figure out how to pick me up since she didn't have one either. 2 hours later, I get a knock on the front door. A bag of assorted cough drops, tissues, cough medicine, just everything you could think of. Hot chocolate included. We had our first date the next day and boy was I sappy. I had the opposite of this happen before. Had just started dating this girl and one day she randomly came to my house in the morning. Was let in by my grandmother and I was like, what the freak are you doing here? It was so random and she definitely became a toxic ex. So maybe randomly showing up can be a red flag instead of a green one. If the person can win against me in Mario Kart. You see, girls always say they could beat me in Mario Kart as a flirt, but then they don't realize I'm deadly with the green shell and I will crush them. It can't be helped. My first date with the person I ended up marrying went like this. We met online, got to know each other a little, then agreed to meet after a while at a bar that they were familiar with. We sat, talked, had a few drinks, had some bar food, and got along like we knew each other for years. After the bar closed, we sat in their car. It was winter time. For another couple of hours and just BS'd with each other. I knew then I might have found someone special. My wife and I aren't drinkers. Our first date consisted of walking around a park for hours, talking easily about who we were. We left and I definitely wanted something romantic with her. She wanted to go for another hike with me. It took until the third date when she thought of me in the same romantic terms. The emphasis is conversation. Hookups at the very most can only take up about 30 minutes. Find someone you can talk to in life. It'll get better. My wife was 30 to 40 minutes late on our first date. It was the first time that we had ever met. She was very apologetic and once she settled down from feeling bad about being late, she asked me questions no other gal ever had. Nothing crazy, but just questions genuinely interested in me. She has been the sweetest angel every day since too, and she also gave me 2 amazing daughters. Hard to explain, but her green flags were, and are, everywhere. Aside from punctuality. Text me when you get home. Love that. If they're polite to customer service people, it's usually a good sign that they'll be nice to you. Looks like pictures, helps carry the conversation, actually shares information about yourself, don't stick with the generic answers for whatever reason, doesn't interact with their phone, although I get it if I just came back from the bathroom, and be on time. Not on their phone, not talking about X, seems engaged in the conversation. Well, I've been on quite a few first and second dates in the last 3 years. Some were a ton of fun, some really sucked. The ones that ended up going anywhere had most of these in common. On time, conversation flows easily, she asks questions and contributes. If we're having fun, going on a second location is a good sign. At the end of the date, if she leans in for a kiss or even asks you back to her place. She's got to be polite to the staff, and if you pay for the date, being thanked is nice. Also being straightforward about her date goals from the start. If she genuinely cares about how you're doing in life, if she makes effort to understand you as a person, and if she chooses to split the bill at the end of the date. Being a girl going through these comments, really? These just feel like common decency. Dating must suck for guys. Speaking as a guy, one positive is we do fear SA a lot less than women have to. But on the downside, we are socially expected to carry the conversation, pick up the check, bear the burden of making the first move, and take a backseat to whatever is on the girl's phone at any given second. I'm an old widower, but for me, green flags were open honesty, vaguely similar thoughts on politics and religion, absolutely no facade stuff, and taking turns asking questions about each other and paying attention to each other's answers. We talked for a while and really hit it off and eventually planned to meet up at her place to hook up. When I got there, we ended up sitting on her couch and just talked and talked and talked. This was our first time meeting in person, and our planned hookup had nearly turned into 4 hours of wonderful conversation. Been together 5 years, married her back in September. Easily the best non-hookup I've ever had. Met a woman for the first date at a local mom and pop restaurant serving Polish food. We both got the variety plate. I can't eat beef and she can't eat pork. We had discussed this before meeting, so I gave her my beef and she gave me her pork. Now that's already pretty freaking cute, right? At one point, we were both talking and laughing, and I started having an asthma attack. It takes me a minute to find my inhaler, take a puff, and I start to come back from it. And just as my breath is coming back to normal, she says, "So I took your breath away, huh?" I laughed so hard I needed to hit the inhaler again. Gotta love a person with a quick wit. Wasn't a first date, but a hookup at a party. I was chatting to her and her friends when she asked me if she could kiss me. It was so odd, but she did it in a super cute way. I agreed, but I told her that I think it should be in private. She asked me what room was mine, as the party was at a hotel at the time. We ran up and met in the room. When in the room, I started joking about how random this was, and my quirky personality kinda slipped out. She just mirrored my energy. Every quirk, joke, stupid slip-up, and action just worked with her. It was like we always knew each other. 9 p.m. quickly turned into 5 a.m. I knew this was something special, and I could tell she felt the same way. We moved in together within 3 months and have been side by side for the last 16 years. The green flags was it just worked. My girlfriend farted? No shame. Simply said excuse me and we both laughed. I swear we sounded like the damn horn section when we're together. She's the best. She was just really genuine and honest, and was just as nervous as I was when we met. She also had brought me a small gift that she knew I would love. She was honest about her intentions and expectations in dating. But what really topped it off was how quickly we were able to laugh and be silly together. An ultimate green flag is that the conversation just flows naturally on both sides. I remember the first date. Though we did not call it a date to avoid being labeled, it was rather a meetup, with my significant other that I met on Tinder. We met up at a public coffee place, and the talk was just endless covering of a lot of topics. When we realized it was already getting dark, we still wanted to continue talking, and it was already a 3-hour conversation. By the time we both got back to our homes, it was 11 p.m., and I could not believe what had just happened. I'm horrible at reading people. Many years ago, I learned this little trick. You invite someone to do something in the future, but you leave out obvious details. If they ask you for those details, they're probably actually interested. Example, a group of us are going bowling next Thursday after work. Would you like to come? If she says yes, but doesn't ask what time exactly or which bowling alley, she isn't coming. I see what the poster is trying to imply here, but some people just expect you to let them know. Like me personally, if someone's like, yo, we're going bowling next Thursday, you wanna come? Then I would be like, cool, just let me know. Which means when you figure out the time and place, just let me know. Does your dog or cat like them? Animals see things we don't. I got the dog in the divorce. Years later, I went on a date with someone who ended up coming back to my place, and we stayed up talking until 3 or 4 a.m. I was sleeping in a hammock at the time and didn't own a bed, and also wasn't looking for a hookup, so my date slept on the couch. When I came out to the living room in the morning, my dog was sleeping on this guy's legs. Doggo had never come to bed, Just stayed in the living room with my date. We celebrated 5 years this past January. We lost the dog a few years in, but my cat sleeps near my partner almost every single night. Open body language. This shows if they're actually interested in you and genuinely like you. If their body is pointing towards you and their arms aren't crossed, but also pointing in your direction, it shows that she's comfortable with being around you and probably likes you. If they cross their arms and their body isn't pointing towards you, or if you are sitting beside them on a bench and she puts her legs up on whatever side you are sitting on, this means she doesn't feel comfortable with you yet and probably doesn't like you. Talking about big things like politics, religion, kids, marriage. When I got out of my last relationship, I screened dates. I'm old enough to know what I want, and I wasn't going to waste my time dating someone who didn't match up. Also asking about STD testings. Shows me he is responsible and selective about who he sleeps with. I get one done every 6 months anyways, so I'm happy to compare results with him. We're married now, and our first anniversary is next week. To be honest, asking somebody about STD screenings I think is a positive green flag. I think if you're willing to do that for a possible relationship, I think it shows a lot about your character.
Retail workers of Reddit, what's your Black Friday horror story? We had a lady call the police on our store because we sold out of a TV. I really wish I was lying. They came too. I worked at a store that had a service department. They couldn't bring anything up at the service counter, but they had a computer which made it look like a register. A guy was standing there patiently waiting to be rung up. Finally, somebody notices him and asks what he needs. "I'd like to pay," he says. "I'm sorry, this isn't a register," replies the service tech. The guy then proceeds to try and convince the service tech to let him pay because the line for the main registers is 3 hours long. Of course, the service tech couldn't because he didn't have a register. He just had a computer for making appointments and such. So after 15 minutes of argument, the guy moves off to find the line. Here's the fun part. While he was arguing, somebody else saw him standing by something that looked like a register, so got in line behind him. Then, people saw the shorter line and got in behind them. With nobody to control it, the line to nowhere grew quickly. 15 minutes was all it took for the not line to snake all the way around the department. So when the doofus who started this whole fiasco went to find the right line, he found the end of the line that he had started. Then the guy behind him heard that there wasn't a register, so he followed the first guy. Then the next customer followed the second, and so on. They walked around in a circle for an hour before somebody noticed them. We almost had a riot when a manager had to tell 100 people that they weren't in line and had just waited an hour for nothing. That same year, we had several scuffles at points where the register line had forked into 2 lines. From then on, we marked off a huge register path and had several employees just manage the line. I worked at Walmart years ago. One of my managers thought she was being sneaky and swapped my Black Friday off shift with an on at 9 a.m. Normally, my shifts didn't start until 1 and ended at 9. So this was utter bull. I was in the bakery department and had to work all of Thanksgiving the day before, and they ended up needing more help. I came in at 6 a.m. that day and worked a 14-hour shift because most of my team had been given the holiday off. My manager's excuse being, "You're young, they have families they need to be with and kids to celebrate with." So I was pretty angry. I found out that the Black Friday sale was a 65-inch LCD TV and electronics and PS3s. So needless to say, it was going to be a bloodbath. I stayed in my department because there was literally no one else there and caught up on much needed sanitation. When the manager found out before the sale started, she came my way to rain down fire, brimstone, and bull on me. Thankfully, I could use their own stupid policies against them. There needs to be at least one member of the bakery crew on hand to write on cakes, and since I was the only one there, they were out of luck. I avoided all of the Black Friday chaos, got an easy day of work, and the perfect spot to watch all of it unfold, all while screwing over a manager I hated. It was a beautiful day. I work at the largest lingerie retailer in the country. We had a security guard set up for the beginning of Black Friday. A Southern belle mother decided she didn't want to wait in a 50-person deep line and that she would try and cut. Our security guard asked her multiple times to step to the back of the line or leave. She proceeds to ream him with every curse word in the book and ended by threatening him with a gun she had in her bag. This will be my last holiday in retail. My horror story is the customer who took a poop in one of my fitting rooms and then wiped with a $125 polo from Ralph Lauren. Nothing more needs to be said. I worked for a Gulf superstore as a cashier. Black Friday customers come rushing in and the line starts. I proceed to scan the first item and nothing. The registers are completely down and the lines are growing fast. The only thing we could do is take every transaction manually, write down SKUs, calculate tax, and use the old credit card swipers for 3 hours. I never worked retail during Black Friday again. The store is absolutely packed and a larger trailer trash looking woman gets up to the register with 4 coffee machines, about 30 different pieces of clothing, clearly none of which would fit her, and a set of pots and pans and a blender. I'm at the register serving a line of, at this point, probably 20 people. She gets to my register and I ring everything up. Total comes out to about $200, because most of the stuff she's getting is cheap that we sell even cheaper on Black Friday. Of course, as soon as I tell her the total, I'm wrong. So is the register apparently.
You double scanned most of it. It should be half that price.
No, I didn't, lady. Learn to count. I wish I could say that to her, but my manager is literally right behind me on the other register and would chew me out like no tomorrow. So in my nicest tone of voice, I reply, I don't believe I did. You can even see it right here on the register. If you really want me to, I can start over to make sure nothing's scanned more than once though. Of course, she ignores the whole thing and just tries to pay. She's clearly not been to the store before, because our old register system requires us to take your card and swipe it ourselves. She spends a few seconds looking around for where she can scan her card, and I chime in, we have to scan it up here, ma'am. System is too old for us to have something where you scan the card. I'm so sorry about that. She's already angry enough and trying to fight with me about scanning it herself. Finally, after spitting in my face for a few seconds while I'm forced to smile like the brain-dead monkey corporate thinks I am, she hands me the stupid card. I check the name because legally we have to, and we have to see ID as well. Well, I see the card and immediately expect chaos, because the first name on it is David. She hands me her ID and lo and behold, her name ain't David. I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't legally charge this card. Unless David is with you, in which case I'd need to see his ID.
Are you kidding me? This is my son's card. He's letting me use it. He's at home with my husband.
Oh, lovely. As if this wasn't bad enough already. I'm sorry, I can't swipe this card unless it's yours. Do you have a different card on you with your name on it? After grumbling for a bit, she finally hands over a different card. Go through the normal motions and the card is declined. Great. How can this get any worse? Your card was declined, ma'am. Cue me getting screamed at in front of an ever-growing impatient live audience.
Let me talk to your manager.
At this point, I can only pray that hell itself will swallow this demon up or at least end me so I don't have to deal with it. My manager turns around from her register and says, "Just a moment, ma'am. I'm just finishing up this transaction, then I'll be right with you." Of course, this little old lady ain't got the time for that. At this point, I'm pretty sure my line at the register should be paying me for the entertainment they'll get out of this lady unloading all of her crazy on me. My manager finally turns around and has me switch to her register for the time being while she handles the crazy. I manage to get a few people through the register while I hear screaming coming from both sides, as my manager isn't great with being yelled at. I get a few comments and looks from customers basically saying, "I'm so sorry, we're not all terrible, I promise." Finally, I hear the woman over there yell that she'll put all of her stuff back and go shop somewhere else. Thank God. Turns out that's not what she did. Instead, she ended up going to the exit on the other side of our department and trying to walk out with everything in the cart. My manager sees this and calls loss prevention, and so does the cashier on the register down there. Loss prevention sends some of their guys over to her and they try and stop her after calling the police. Now, I didn't get to leave the register because we were packed, but I was told she tried to fight a few of the people from loss prevention before the cops got there. Ended up with her getting arrested. The rest of my day sucked anyway, but that made it a bit better. When I worked at Best Buy, I watched 2 elderly ladies get into a fist fight over a Nintendo DS. That and cleaning the aftermath of Black Friday looked like a grocery store before a hurricane. When I was 15, I got my first actual job. It was at a clothing store and my first day was Black Friday. I thought it wouldn't be a big deal because I was hired for men's formal wear. When I show up at 4 a.m., my manager tells me I'm working women's shoes today only. Absolute madness. The worst part is shoe salesmen get commission, but since I didn't have employee numbers, I got only minimum wage, losing out on hundreds of dollars of extra pay. Pretty sure they did that on purpose. I worked at Walmart during Black Friday about 12 to 13 years ago. The hot items that year were $10 DVD players and trampolines. The DVD players were stacked on 2 tables near the registers, and the trampolines were in sporting goods. I'm walking to the receiving area in the back, and someone from Sporting Goods asks if I can grab a U-boat or L-cart to load up the last trampoline. I had to go all the way to grocery to get one, and as I'm coming back, someone asks about an item. So I walk 2 feet away from my cart, and some woman grabs it and runs towards Sporting Goods. I get there, and the woman and husband are loading up the trampoline, and it wasn't even for them. The other lady that had it and purchased it, had the receipt and all, just needed to carry out, said, "Hey, that's mine!" And the husband got in her face and said,
"What are you gonna do about it?"
They started to walk off, and I was shocked at that point. And the husband looked at me and said,
"What's your problem?"
I just smiled and told the sporting goods guy to call management. The husband then said,
"Run, honey!"
And they booked it to the front. They made it out of the store with the trampoline, too. Then I get to the front near the $10 DVD players. One older woman grabs the last one left on one of the 2 tables. Another lady grabs the same one. They scuffle. One lady decks the other one into the other table full of $10 DVD players. They all fall over and she runs, never dealing with that again. When I was in school, I worked at Walmart for the holidays. They had a fun agreement where if you worked Thanksgiving 6 p.m. until Black Friday morning 6 a.m., you didn't have to come in Black Friday. Fun, right? So after Thanksgiving lunch with my boyfriend's family at 4 p.m., I headed to work where I put on an oversized yellow smock with a blue sun on it. I was put in charge of 70-inch plasma screen television vouchers. I was given 7 vouchers to distribute at 8 p.m. so customers could go to the register, pay for the television, and have it loaded into their car around back. So problems arose very quickly. A line for the 70-inch TV began as I started my shift at 6 p.m. As soon as 7 people formed a line, I had to turn people away. At 8 p.m., the vouchers were distributed. Customers 1 and 2 were husband and wife. They were an older couple who brought camping chairs to wait for their 2 vouchers. Here's where the mess started. Customer 8 approaches me for a voucher. I tell him that they've all been distributed and he was free to come back within the hour to see if anyone surrendered their voucher. He then becomes visually distressed and angry, to which there was nothing I could do. In comes customer 1 from before, the older man from the couple. He offers to sell his voucher to customer 8 for what was close to the price of the on-sale television that had not been purchased. Customer 8 agrees reluctantly and pulls out the money in exchange for the television voucher. The older couple then walks off with not only Mrs. Customer 2's television voucher, but also the newly acquired cash to buy said television at the register. In comes customer 9, who addresses me very angrily with,
"Hey you, aren't you gonna do something about that?"
while gesturing wildly at the older couple who totally scored and the poor guy who essentially paid double for a Black Friday television. I had to let that customer know that what the others did with the vouchers was their business. This guy got way too close to me and one of my coworkers noticed and came to help. The guy then takes off in a huff and claims Walmart cheated him. 2 months later, I quit to work in my licensed field and never looked back. Years later, still no regrets. I don't even like going into the store I worked at. Not retail, but I worked at a restaurant that is right across the street from the mall and open on Black Friday. So naturally, after people get great deals on whatever, they come to eat. Anyways, I'm sitting in back of the house Black Friday morning waiting for my inevitably long shift to start. It was incredibly busy as it was, but I wasn't about to clock in early. I was messing around with one of the managers when I heard a hostess scream through the walkie, "Help! Help!" So I immediately rushed to the entrance to see 2 grown men on the ground fighting, one in nothing but his underwear, and my shift lead trying to pull them off each other while screaming,
"Stop! This is a family restaurant! There are children here!"
I jolted forward in an attempt to break up the fight. This is where it gets weird. Everyone is gathered around this small area watching or trying to help when someone grabbed a fire extinguisher and started spraying us with it. So we have a bunch of people trying to break up a fight between a man in his underwear and some other dude, and someone spraying us with a fire extinguisher while we have Christmas carols playing in the background. Finally, we get the fight broken up, cops show up, the whole 9 yards. Guy number 1 got the last TV voucher from Best Buy, and guy number 2 was very angry about that. So he followed him over to the restaurant to try and buy the TV from him. Guy 1 told Guy 2 to screw off, so Guy 2 took off his pants and started to fight Guy 1. My Black Friday 2 years ago was just the opposite of crazy. I used to work in a grocery store, so it was absolutely dead the whole shift. I've never been so utterly and thoroughly bored before or since. I would have killed for some crazy things to happen, just so I could have a chuckle about it the next day. I work at a kids store where almost everything was half off for Black Friday. But the thing is, I normally help moms and grandparents at the register, so I don't see Best Buy style murder over televisions. I get old ladies yelling at my coworkers over the price of smiley face pillows and women bringing in hundreds of dollars worth of clothing and kitty makeup they bought weeks before at full price, just to buy it all back right away at sale price after the return's over. I also had a grandpa shout at me because I told him we were out of bathrobes. Good times. For me, I was working my first job, second week in, and I'm working the floor at a Best Buy on Black Friday. I wasn't great at my job yet, so they had me running people from the line they had set up to different registers and quickly answering questions from customers. No big deal. At about 1 a.m., as I'm running customers back and forth, we hear a commotion on the other side of the store, and a few police officers come in. Turns out, some guy had broken a bit of plastic off of one of the information plaques and tried to use the pointy bit to stab an employee in the neck. I never found out why he did it. Some people are just crazy. I'm so incredibly thankful not to be working retail anymore. When I was working at Walmart, me and another coworker had a lady come in during our Black Thursday sale with her children. She was going around shopping with her kids for a while, but then saw me and my coworker in the bedding department and left her children with us, asking for us to watch them while she went to get some products. Before we were able to tell her no, she disappears and doesn't come back for her kids for 20 minutes. Both of us are just standing there watching her kids slowly freak out and cry for their mother, wondering if she's gonna come back. My supervisor then walks by and sees what's going on, and we filter in. She was quite annoyed with the mother, who by this point has yet to make an appearance. When mom finally showed, her children rushed to her, and my supervisor had a chat with her. Unfortunately, I didn't catch what my supervisor said to her. I worked as a cashier at Target 2 years ago on Black Friday. My particular store opened at 7 on Thanksgiving, and I had to be there from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I don't know how other stores do it, but for mine, we had vouchers for the big ticket items like the new iPads and huge HD TVs and so on. So there usually wasn't a stampede of people, and the lines to the registers were set up very efficiently, doing all the preparation we can to avoid making it complete chaos. I began to feel hopeful that it would be an okay night, well worth the holiday pay. As the doors were unlocked, I could not have been more wrong. At around midnight, 2 large women come to my register with 4 carts piled with random crap they had coupons for. Just imagine 40 bottles of shampoo, 50 sticks of deodorant, 25 2 liters of soda, etc. All just piled in there. I take a deep breath and begin scanning items. And as I tell them the total, somewhere around $800, one of them pulls out a wad of slightly damp coupons from her bra. Stifling the urge to vomit, I accept them and proceed to scan/attempt to scan roughly 200 coupons. After doing about 20 of them with only 3 or 4 working, I decide to look at the coupons and sort them into expired and non-expired, as well as coupons from other stores that we didn't take. We would take manufacturer's coupons and Target coupons, but we wouldn't take a Bed Bath & Beyond coupon. About 20 minutes later, some coupons were hard to make out because of the dampness, and the ladies insisting I sort through them all, I finalized the tally and proceeded to scan the maybe 30 coupons that were valid or acceptable. The ladies realize that the pile is significantly shorter than it should have been and start complaining to me about the lack of coupons. I explain the situation and continue scanning and then putting them away in the register. The lovely part came when the ladies realized their total was only reduced to around $700. Screaming that I was trying to scam them, the lady demanded I scan all the coupons. I politely explained that I could not scan the majority due to them being expired or unusable at our store. She then asked what discounts I could give her, and when I said that I couldn't give her any besides the normal 5% if she paid with a red card, she began pulling at the neckline of her shirt, asking if there was anything she could do to get a discount. Let me stop here and say that I am partial to the thicker female form, but I'm not particularly attracted to someone who looks like a pregnant Michelin man. So I again politely politely refused and said if they had any more valid coupons, I would be happy to scan them. Otherwise, their total was X. Now the fun part. The two land whales decide their rights have been infringed upon and begin screaming profanities, prompting the team lead and 2 AP officers to come to my register rather quickly. Upon seeing people who looked in charge, the ladies began telling them how I failed to do my job and things like that. After I told my boss what I did, she agreed with me and said that I was following the store's policy. The ladies then tipped over all 4 carts full of their crap, spilling it all over the aisle, threw change at me and my team lead, and proceeded to waddle out of the store. I quit right then and there, and now I'm loving my job at a bakery. About 6 years ago, I was working at a mall bookstore's cafe. I had the opening shift, which, thankfully, because it was in a mall, was 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Unfortunately, the late shift person called in sick, so I had 2 hours off before a 4 p.m. to close shift. While that sucks, it wasn't the worst part of my day. I actually had a customer who was stalking me and spent the entire day sitting in the cafe reading a book and occasionally coming up to order something new. Anytime I wasn't behind the counter or in the back room, he followed me around, including during my 2-hour shift gap. I didn't dare go to my car on my break because I didn't want him knowing what it looked like, and my manager didn't want to call security on him if he didn't actually approach me. Worst Black Friday ever. Luckily, 2 weeks later, he did approach me while I was working and asked if he could clip my fingernails as a keepsake. That was enough to get him banned from not only the store, but also the mall. My manager also made sure someone walked me to my car for the next few months, so it was all good. Last year, my store had some seasonal cashiers start on Thanksgiving Black Friday, and within the first hour of his first shift, some idiot tried to steal cash out of his drawer and stuff it in his apron. Our AP guy simply walked out of his office and escorted him off the floor until the police arrived without the customers noticing.
What is the dumbest thing you got punished for in school? Flip the monitor screen upside down, Control plus Alt plus arrow key. Got banned from using any school computer for the rest of the year. I did this by mistake once, and I told my friend about it. After I left, he decided to flip the screen and leave it that way. I got in trouble for leaving the computer in an inoperable state. They had to re-image the whole thing. I feel like I did this once when I was younger and had a meltdown because I didn't know how to get it back. Technology is hard. 6th grade, a classmate got to school without her backpack and I was the only one to notice. School started and she was looking for her bag and I told her that I saw her arrive without it. After which she started yelling at me for no reason, telling everyone that I had hid her bag. I exploded with laughter because it was funny that she was blaming me. Teachers came and sent me to the principal's office. Nobody believed me and I guess giggling didn't help. I was in detention until this kid's mom called the school and let her stupid daughter know that she forgot her backpack at home. I'm 33 now, and not so long ago I saw this girl again. I went to say hello and to remind her of that day, which I still find funny. She didn't react at all to that. Yeah, you're still a jerk, Susan. Freaking Susan. In middle school, one of my friends brought Hello Kitty Band-Aids to school, and our entire friend group decided to wear them as accessories on our hands and arms because they were cute. Our English teacher wrote us up and demanded that we not wear bandages for the rest of the year because he saw them as gang symbols. A Hello Kitty Band-Aid gang. I still don't understand his thought process. Sanrio gang rise up? Holding my pencil the wrong way. Teachers hated it. They tried those little rubber things and nothing worked. I just liked my way. I have nice handwriting, by the way. Well, this really irked my 5th grade math teacher. So she started to dock 5 points on every test or quiz I held my pencil wrong. When my father asked what this was about, I told him and he laughed and said, "Keep going." Wait a minute, you had a 5th grade math teacher? You're telling me in the 5th grade you didn't have one teacher that taught you everything? My elementary teacher once freaked out because I was holding not 1, not 2, but 3 pencils at one time. Why the hell do they even care? 4th grade, this crazy girl who was always talking to herself told me about her elaborate plan to kill the teacher. I told the teacher and got in trouble for gossiping. This OP probably got put on the crazy girl's hit list after being a snitch. Talking during lunch. The policy was a silent lunch, also with silent classroom hours, meaning the children weren't allowed to talk. which essentially gave everyone half an hour of recess to get out all that built up energy. Understandably, my 5-year-old self was not down with that. We were in the process of being dismissed anyways. It technically counted as recess time. I have a somewhat common sounding name. However, I only ever really encountered 2 people with my name. One of them was in middle school. He was black. I'm white. One time I got called to the principal's office for something that had happened on the bus on the way to school. I wasn't a bus rider. All the other students involved were black. One look at me, and the principal knew it wasn't me, so I was dismissed. The next year, I decided to cut class with a couple of friends. We just took off running across the field, which was behind the cafeteria at the end of lunch. As we ran, one of the administrators saw us, and another friend of ours was close by. Pretty sure he got grilled and ratted us out. My 2 other friends got suspended, but I never heard a peep. I suspect the opposite thing happened. The black kid with my name got called in, and they obviously knew he wasn't involved. Dude, this could be a sitcom. You guys could live together and get into wacky antics and social misunderstandings. Instead of Everybody Loves Raymond, we can call it Everybody Loves Racism. Being left-handed on the first day of first grade, the teacher took away my pencil and made me use my right hand. When my mother picked me up, I told her what happened. She talked to the principal, who apologized, and then called in the teacher to make her apologize. The rest of the school year was very tense. Another event that occurred to me. I got a day of internal suspension in high school for having an overdue library book. I had returned it on time, but the librarian put it on the wrong cart and it was shelved without being scanned back in. I know this because a few days after I returned the book, I saw it on the shelf. I still had to pay the overdue book fine. Dude, I wasn't permitted to graduate college until I returned or paid for a book I only had for 24 hours. Plus late fees because the library lost it. I very much feel your pain. Refusing to dance in kindergarten. We were doing some activity that involved dancing. I didn't want to, and I convinced a friend of mine to join me in protest. So they sent me to the principal's office and called my mom. Damn the man. Dude, this OP was trying to unionize in kinder. Hugging a friend of mine. School had a no PDA rule and they cracked down on it hard. I had just seen my friend for the first time after winter break. I gave her a hug for like a second. I was also female. Teacher saw it and threw a fit and I would end up talking to the principal. Good thing the principal was a smart lady. She let me and my friend off with a warning and I never hugged anyone in school ever again. Did this school happen to be in Florida? Because it gives off Florida vibes. Started a huge conga line my senior year. One morning, I went to my locker and was talking to my friends. We decided to start a conga line for some stupid reason. I was in the front, so I led us down the hallway. I started to point at people and told them to join the party. I told them to invite anybody that they knew. I led us through the cafeteria, through the gym, and when I decided to walk to the principal's office, a teacher stopped us and said that the conga line was a fire hazard since it had gotten so long. I told them that that was dumb, and if there was a fire, we'd conga right out of the school. They gave me a good talking to for being a smart butt. Also, I was going to get paddled by the principal for fighting. He told me that he liked me, so he was only going to give me 1 paddling. I told him if he liked me, he should give me 2. I got suspended for that one. I would be shocked if this OP wasn't the class clown because these posts were hilarious. In 5th grade, we were starting an assignment. The TA was going around passing out papers we needed. I was going through my pencil case, kind of mumbling a supply checklist to myself. Pencil, sharpener, eraser. She handed me the sheet and I say, paper. She looks at me all weirdly and walks away. Don't know what that was about, but I just start working. About a minute later, the teacher walks up to me and says I have to stay for detention at recess. What? Reason being, the TA thought I said payback, apparently as in there will be payback for giving me this paper, I guess? It was completely stupid. I explained myself and they just weren't having it. We argued until lunch, and I was getting increasingly pissed off to the point where I was on the verge of tears. Eventually, everyone left, and the teacher said, "Okay, I believe you. I don't think that you'd be this upset if you weren't telling the truth. Just apologize and you can go out with the rest of the class." That pissed me off even more, and I asked what I was supposed to apologize for. Just say that you're sorry that we misunderstood you, then you can go play. I took the detention. Hell yeah, I love taking a stand. My elementary days are becoming a bit more foggy as I get older, but I definitely remember being a kid that talked back when a teacher didn't make sense. Definitely got sent to the principal a couple of times too. Cracking my back. The teacher wrote me up for doing gymnastics in class and sent me to the principal. He laughed and asked if I did a barrel roll. I had to have it signed by my parents as well, who also laughed. It was funny for everybody, but at the end of the day, I was still stuck on a Saturday morning doing stupid work. I'm still bitter about it. Reading during class. They were teaching us how to open a Word document. The detention was lunch detention. They assumed that me, a lonely little 6th grader, would be in agony by not eating in the lunchroom, but instead a quiet room. I just happily ate my lunch and read my book more. A woman yelled at me in college about sleeping in her class. I was in an intro to computer class. I had taken every computer class in high school, including Cisco networking and 4 years of Microsoft Office. I explained this and she was still upset that I had finished all of her work for her day in 10 minutes. It was making a super simple PowerPoint, and I decided to nap because the class was at 8 in the freaking morning. Man, must be nice to have computer classes for 4 years of high school. I think we had just one computer class for the 4 years, and just so happened to use computers in other random classes. My senior year of high school, power went out and neither my mom's nor my alarm went off. This was 30 years ago, no cell phone alarms. Neither one of us woke up in time to get me to school on time. She brought me in late with a note saying that it wasn't my fault that I was late. They gave me detention for an unexcused tardy. I go off that it wasn't unexcused, that I had a note that said I wasn't the cause for being late. The office person said that the note wasn't a valid excuse. I say something along the lines of, "So you're telling me that if I had lied and said that I had a doctor's appointment, I would be fine?" She says yes. I tell her that that's BS and all they're doing is telling people to lie instead of tell the truth. She says something along the lines of, "Someday I'll learn that telling the truth is its own reward and that lying has its own consequences." To which I said, "But those consequences aren't a detention." I was furious. I went to the phones at school, pay phones by the way, and called my mom at work. Told her the story, and an hour later I got called back to the office because apparently my mom had written the wrong thing on the note. I was at a doctor's appointment that morning, so I didn't have to serve a detention. In the 4th grade, I drew a picture of Link from Zelda and included a crappy portrayal of the Master Sword. Went to the principal's office and they called my parents. Sounds like you drew Link's other Master Sword. It must have been 1st or 2nd grade. I was sitting with the kid on the bus to school that I got along with. We weren't great friends, but we would talk on the way to school. I have no clue what started this convo, but he started asking me if I thought a grenade would blow up the bus. Well, I guess so. What about an RPG? I guess. A tank definitely could. That wasn't verbatim, but you get the gist. It was some kid just idly daydreaming probably about Call of Duty or something. I do remember that to this day I was reading when that convo started. I replied with nothing other than, "Yeah, that makes sense," or "I guess." We both were suspended from riding the bus for a week. Oh boy, here we go. I was playing Mario Kart DS with my friends on the bus in either 4th or 5th grade. Suddenly, like 4 bombs just fell on me at once. And I turned around and told my friend sitting in the back seat behind me what had happened after he asked what my exasperated "oh no" was for. I'm greeted at the school by a majority of the security guards and forcibly escorted to the principal's office for threatening to drop bombs on the school. I bet this kid hit the bus driver with the blue shell and this was his revenge. English class in the 10th grade. We had a test on a book that we were supposed to be reading. The entire test was short answer, and I had literally not read a single word of this book, meaning it would be next to impossible for me to guess any of the correct answers. When the teacher was passing out the exams, I politely said to her, "I'm sorry, but I didn't read at all, so you just have to keep that paper." She told me that she was very disappointed and asked me at least to write my name on the test so that she knew that I was present that day. I wrote my name at the top in pen. According to the syllabus in that class, using a pen on any of the assignments results in -2 points on the grade. I received a -2 on that test. I would have performed better by staying home that day. Man, that teacher was petty. Got yelled at in the 6th grade. I was bused to a bad neighborhood by the guard watching us on the playground for being on the sidewalk, not the blacktop. I said, "Okay, sorry," and I did a little wave. She detained me and drilled me, "What gang sign did you just throw at me?" I was this little 10-year-old white Mormon girl and didn't even know what a gang sign was. My name is spelled with an AH in the middle, which is usually for said name to be spelled for female variant. In year 7, a teacher went off on me when I was writing on the front of a book saying that that wasn't my name and she spelled it wrong on purpose. Cue a very long argument I lost, which resulted in me having to write lines of the spelling without the H in my lunch break, while the teacher berated me for lying about something I wasn't actually lying about. This reminds me of a sub we had that wouldn't believe my classmate's name was Gideon. That's an older name, sure, but it's perfectly normal and biblical even. The sub flipped the freak out, thought everyone was messing with her that was his name, and he got sent down to the principal. There was this kid in my class with obvious behavioral problems, but the school didn't do jack crap to help him. One day at recess, some other kids were playing keep away with his hat. He has a total meltdown and just starts attacking one of the kids, throwing punches, kicking, screaming. Trying to defuse the situation, I walk up behind him and I get him in a bear hug so he stops punching this kid in the face and just keeps saying, "Calm down." At that moment, I hear a teacher screaming my name. I turn and see her watching from a window. A minute later, she comes running outside yelling at me and drags me to the principal's office. My parents are called and I have to have a conference with the teacher, principal, my mom, the other kid, and his parents. Nothing I say matters because the teacher saw me beating this kid up from the window. I ended up with detention, had to apologize to this kid and his parents, and was suspended from the basketball team. I was in the 4th grade. Prior to being dropped off at school by my dad, I had discovered an old school Lego spear. You know, the little brown ones? And a rubber band. I had likewise discovered if you stretched the rubber band around the length of the spear and then pulled slightly on it, you could make a square shape with the spear propping up 2 of the corners. This is amazing, I thought to myself. I conveniently forgot that if you pull the sides of the rubber band too much, then the spear goes flying. So I brought my new square maker toy to show all my friends, and they were about as impressed as you are all reading this. We're waiting in line to go to one of the classes, and I'm showing my friends, and lo and behold, the spear flies out of the rubber band and hits my teacher in the glasses. She just stares at me, I stare at her, and she says, "Go to the principal's office." I find out later that she claims that I attempted to kill her. The principal just laughed while all 3 of us were in the office, and she told me that she had to call my dad and he had to come in. The principal relayed the story, and now my dad's laughing too. I think that teacher was onto something. Kids can be stone cold killers. Yelling no loudly. I was in the 4th or 5th grade. The teacher asked if we wanted to play a game no one liked. Everyone was like, "No." And I guess I yelled. I didn't even realize I was louder than the other kids, and I was very confused when I got in trouble. I was sent to sit in a little cubicle near the classroom. The teacher forgot me and they all went to lunch and some other teacher found me there, crying alone in the dark. And then in high school, the teacher said no talking and the kid next to me asked me a question. And before I could even tell him to shut up, I got detention. He didn't though. I had to copy an essay about how I would bring my letter grade up by paying attention in class. I had straight A's. Another time, in maybe the 7th grade, my friend kept throwing my Hobbit book across the lunchroom, and when I went to go get it, she would bump me off the edge of the bench onto the floor when I tried to sit down. So she goes to throw it again and I grab her wrist to stop her and she starts crying and we both got detention, which I thought was really unfair considering she was bullying me and had literally knocked me to the ground. From my experience, bullies never got in trouble. I got yelled at for consulting an encyclopedia. No formal punishment, the teacher just knew she was wrong and I was about to look up the correct answer. I tell this story too damn much, but here I go. In the 4th grade, we were required to keep a journal. It was an English lesson thing. One time, I wrote about my passion at the time, which was insects, and about something that I had learned, which was insect camouflage. The teacher underlined every instance of camouflage and wrote that I spelled it incorrectly. She wrote it spelled CAMOFLAGUE. I was like, what the freak? No, it isn't. I knew this because I didn't know how to spell the damn word, and I had to use a dictionary. And when I looked it up, it was spelled the way I thought it was. I showed the teacher and she insisted the dictionary was wrong. So I got my friend's dictionary, and once again, it was spelled camouflage. CAMOUFLAGE. She insisted that his dictionary was also wrong and that she was correct. I was mad, so I brought a completely different, brand new freaking dictionary to school, where it was spelled the way I thought. She snapped and said if I didn't drop the issue, I would get detention. I dropped it, but I should have kept fighting for it. To her credit, I still remember how to correctly spell camouflage. Kissing my girlfriend. Someone in the house across the street saw, called the school, and I was suspended for a few days. This didn't happen at school, but I got caught by my neighbor filling up my girlfriend when we were both in the 8th grade outside my house. I just heard this loud knocking from the neighbor's window and we both got super embarrassed. But hey, still touched some honkers. Some jerk of a kid thought it would be funny to attack me out of the blue. I ended up with a sprained wrist and some broken ribs and he was totally fine. I got a week of in-school suspension and he got away scot-free. It was in the 1960s. I was a straight A student. When asked my opinion about a book in class I was reading, I admitted that I thought it was boring. I got 10 lashes with a leather strap on each hand and a month of after-school detention. I had some kid prepared to hit me in the face with the football. I decided to grab his arm and take the football out of his hand. Another kid then took the ball and threw it at him. He went off and cried saying that I hit him and threw the football at him. Everyone in class took the stance of no snitching, and I got suspended because no one would verify my side of the story. So much for defending myself. This was the 6th grade. I got into an argument with the kid who bullied me a lot. So I told him, at least my parents like each other. His parents were divorced. Jerk move, I know. But this kid was also a huge jerk. Anyways, he gets pissed and leaves. I think, finally, he'll leave me alone. He returns with a big rock and bashes me in the head with it. I'm knocked out and have to get carried back to the nurse's office by another kid, leaving a trail of blood. It required a few stitches. So I get suspended for 3 days and 1 day of in-school suspension for bullying. The other kid went home for half the day. I have had a few situations in my public school life, but that made me lose complete faith in the administration. My buddy tackled me out of the blue and we both got in trouble for roughhousing. Understandable, but when we both told the powers that be that I had nothing to do with it and that he had tackled me out of nowhere for no reason, I remained in trouble because I hadn't dodged the attack. No joke. How did your crazy ex become your crazy ex? After I broke up with her, she used makeup to make fake bruising on her arms, neck, and face. She then proceeded to send pictures of all of this to our mutual friends as a warning about me. I suspected that she was crazy long before I knew her, but I realized that she was a freaking psychopath when she asked me to euthanize my dog because he was taking up too much of our time. Holy crap, that's a nightmare! Yeah, I had to pull to the side of the road to finish that conversation, because I started shaking uncontrollably after those words sank in. Dude, that is what we call a stage 5 clinger. Put an ad in the paper, became a lady of the night, brought clients to our family home, we had kids. If finding out your partner was cheating was an Olympic sport, this guy might be taking home the gold. I can't decide if this is hilarious or horrifying. Sims characters should never date their neighbors. Ever had a girlfriend threaten to harm herself because your Sims character is dating the computer-generated neighbor? I did. She woke me up because I had the night sweats and she was convinced I had AIDS. For some reason, I decided to appease her and I got a full STD screening test, including an expensive AIDS test. A few weeks later, I drove to her house and gave her my signed note, which I specifically had to request from my doctor stating my clean bill of health. She accused me of foraging the entire thing and in the following argument pulled out her plates out of her cupboard and started frisbeeing them at me. I left immediately. About 6 months later, I had just started dating my now fiance. She contacted me to tell me that she believed me and wanted to know if she and her 2 dogs could move in with me. I never responded. Dude, just waking up and demanding you get an AIDS test should have been the I'm getting the freak out of here moment. I knew that, I know that. I was young and she seemed cool prior to that. She also got extremely religious during the course of all of that and quit her well-paying job without notice. Honestly, I think her mental health was on a serious decline. I can speak as someone who has dated a fair share of toxic women. When you are dumb, young, and full of well, you often don't think clearly and red flags turn gray. He painted my name all over his bedroom, bathroom, and lounge room, proposed and then photoshopped us into wedding pictures, sent invites to all of his family, mine, and my friends, got an ultrasound photo online and tried to announce to Facebook that we were expecting a baby, shaved our initials into his cat, and left hundreds of love letters taped to my car. So that was crazy. We went on half a double date with friends. I was just being a good sport. Noped out when he proposed when the food came out. The rest came over the next week. To clarify, in case that was confusing, this was all after our one and only date. This wasn't a we dated for months and then his crazy came out. This was, we met an hour ago, why are you proposing to me? She tried to draw my blood out while I was sleeping to put it in a vial she wore around her neck. Dude, I heard about people that do this, and I just have to ask why. Like, what is the purpose? Would start arguments out of thin air because I'm drama and this is who I am. Then one day I went drinking in her hometown. She ran into her ex, and a day later she said sorry, but I'm going to start dating him again. 2 days after that, she was begging to get back together. Nope. Messaged me occasionally for a few years to go out for a drink, but eventually she stopped when she got knocked up. Good luck to the guy who knocked her up. In addition to being an absolute gem of a personality, she had awful genetics and family. Getting that quote at the start just made me think of Breaking Bad. I'm drama, and I'm the one who starts it. He tried to strangle me with an HDMI cord because I didn't straighten my hair that day. He had been crazy for a while, but this was the very moment when I realized it. He walked miles in the snow to get to my house, tapped on my bedroom window for an hour until I acknowledged him. I turned him away. In the morning, I heard him rustling in my closet upon waking up. The little freak snuck into my house somehow and was hiding in my closet. I threatened to call the cops, so he left. Weeks later, he emailed me pictures of me sleeping from that night. I still have nightmares about finding him in my closet. This is by far one of the worst stories I've ever read here. I truly hope you are okay and have some form of legal separation from this psycho. He called me endlessly for 2 years. He's disappeared now, but it took a while. Are we gonna question what she means by disappeared? Like, did he just go away or did she make him go away? Was supposed to be medicated and never told me. Didn't matter since she stopped taking her meds before we dated. She tried to make up for it by taking many different recreational substances that she failed to mention as well. Found her substance kit and I noped out. Her mother said, and I quote, I'm surprised you made it as long as you did. I dated a girl that was bipolar, and I can confirm that things can drastically change if they suddenly stop taking their meds. Killed the dog that my dead spouse gave me. What a jerk. Please tell me you went on an epic killing rampage like John Wick. My husband's ex, his girlfriend from high school, was crazy because she set up an appointment for a portrait session to have pictures done for our 3 children for her house. No, we didn't let that fruitcake take our children. They broke up their senior year of high school. And this was when we were in our 30s. We were shocked by the contact from her, never mind the appointment. We also found out she had her phone number listed, this was the time of phone books, as Mrs. Our surname this whole time, which was never her real name. She was stuck in her high school fantasy, which was frightening. This is the kind of story that has me Googling my ex's first names in combination with my last name, just in case. I could see one in particular pulling crap like this. This is definitely the start of a horror or suspense movie. Beat the crap out of me, then out of his next GF and their kids. He lied about his police record and previous conviction from beating me. He is charming and manipulative, so I get why she believed him. He got out of prison recently for what he did, and I'm just glad I'm across the country now. He started messaging all the new guys he thought I would maybe go out with, asking them not to invite me out because he felt like he still had a chance with me. This happened not once or twice. This happened with around 10 guys. He didn't even know them in person. I didn't even know them. I told her after 3 years of dating that I was actually a war refugee from Chechnya. She just knew that I was from Russia, nothing more. And that I had seen a lot of horrible things during my childhood. I saw people get executed, bombs exploding, people dying slowly of gangrene, dodging snipers, etc. Never really told anybody this in my life since I came to America. I told her because I was pretty sure I wanted to spend my future with her. I told her it was a massive deal that I told her this in the first place, because I've never told anybody. She left me right afterwards because she assumed I was crazy or mentally damaged from all the crap that I went through. She said that she didn't want to date some scary war refugee. The worst part was her parents, who I mostly communicated through because she refused to talk to me. They believed it too. They said horrible things about me, saying I was a criminal, a junkie, that I would end up beating her up, and that I'm just another street Arab. I am Missouri, not Arab. They basically put their foot down and said I could never date someone like their daughter. It was one of the worst weeks of my life. Really made me lose faith in long-term relationships. For all those curious, it wasn't an immediate thing. She always found me sketchy in a way because I was from the bad part of Brooklyn, and she knew I had a history with some hard substances in my teen years, even after coming to America. She was scared of all that stuff. She wouldn't go to certain bars or clubs that had a certain type of person. She preferred yuppie bars. She came from a white upper-class suburbs, so right there it was a major divide in how we grew up. Apparently that divide made her really uncomfortable. Like she couldn't relate to me, and finding out that I was a war refugee was the last straw for her. She tried to drown herself in a river in the middle of December because she thought I wanted to sleep with someone else. I had to wait out and get her. This was after she spiked my phone on the ground when I received a text message from a friend saying my then girlfriend had left her purse at the bar. On a separate occasion, she grabbed her car keys from me after getting wasted, and when I tried to stop her from driving, she almost ran me over. Yeah, she was nuts. Sounds like this girl I dated once when I was younger. Way before Uber and Lyft was a thing. She had been drinking and I told her that I would drive her home. She was extremely adamant that she would be fine to drive. Well, I told her that I was going to at least follow her home to make sure, and she just said fine. Well, the moment she got into her car, it became a Fast and the Furious movie. She was driving like she just robbed a bank and I was the cops. She tried to lose me on the highway and I ended up catching up to her at some gas station, and she freaked out and sped off again. I stopped following her after she called me and told me that if her dad finds out she's dating someone, he would send someone to kill me. I wasn't taking any chances, so I backed off. As you might assume, she turned out to be extremely toxic. Murdered my pet cat and left her corpse in my sock drawer. Was pregnant with another guy's baby. I found out when she lost it during a substance overdose. That was when I learned that she was pregnant and also did substances. Genetics. Both of her parents were bat crap crazy, so I shouldn't be surprised when she started stalking me after she cheated on me and I dumped her. She threatened a few of my, and by extension our, female friends with physical violence just for being around me, and tried to get me fired from my job. She called my manager and told him that I was on substances. Nothing further from the truth, and had two of her other friends come into my store and be extremely angry customers saying I felt them up or something. Fortunately, my boss knew about everything that was going on and didn't buy any of it. I noticed my undergarments were going missing. I mentioned it while doing the laundry. He accused me of cheating, saying that I left my things at some other dude's house, and that totally meant that I was cheating, and he began hurting me for the missing things. I was pregnant with his child at the time. I kicked him out. I was scared crapless on how I was going to support myself while I was about to give birth and miss 6 weeks of work. I began packing his things to keep my frightened mind busy. Found a big box hidden in the basement full of my undergarments, huge inflatable toys for where the sun don't shine, and trans adult content. My thigh highs were tied in knots with junk hair sticking out of them. I put in a video labeled with my name. It's him dressed in my clothes, doing stuff to himself while pretending to be me. Turns out he was a secret crossdresser with a violent history and multiple substance charges. Lied about everything, from his education to his orientation. I don't trust human beings anymore. Oh, I had one mega crazy ex. This girl was 5 kinds of freaked in the head and needed to be locked up. First, she had a kid. I didn't doubt that. I saw her stretch marks. Not a big deal. She claimed the kid had been kidnapped by a baby daddy and disappeared. Okay, strange things have happened. Things started not adding up soon. She was a pathological liar. Started with, I make $60 an hour in the military, which I knew was BS for her rank, since my mom was a higher rank than she was and made far less than that. She stole my car one night, and by the time the cops got there, she had already got back and claimed innocence, and the cops threatened to arrest me for making a false report. She then tried playing the ultimate psycho card. She said she got a call saying that the kid and her dad had been found in a wreck in Canada, and that the kid was dead. At first, I wasn't sure to call BS on that or not. 2 days later, she downed a bottle of sleeping pills with a full bottle of vodka. While she was in the hospital, I did some digging and found out that she and her husband got a divorce. He was awarded full custody due to her being a complete nutbag. I noped the freak out of there as fast as I could. Crazy story, but I do want to point out that you can 100% get stretch marks without having a kid. I'm a dude and I have some. Sometimes you just grow too fast for your body to keep up. When he got himself locked in 4-point restraints in the ER because he was convinced he had AIDS and started trying to infect the staff. Or when he proudly told me that he was the son of Jesus Christ. Or when he tried to kick in my door at 3 a.m. as a grand romantic gesture. Or also when he thought his bald spot would grow hair again if he was just a better person. That Jesus Christ comment reminds me of that kid on TikTok that believes he's the reincarnation of Hitler because he has a birthmark where Hitler apparently got shot. Cat disappeared. Strange, was a friendly cat. Upstairs neighbor with big dogs came down screaming that my ex somehow convinced both dogs to jump out of the window to their deaths. She attacked me with scissors and a knife on different days. Serviced some guy in his car outside of our apartment. Finally, turned on her hairdryer and threw it into the shower with me. It takes a lot to piss me off apparently. Man, I wasn't expecting this post to get as much attention as it did, so let me elaborate a little bit. 2 disclaimers, I was young and stupid, and she was sexy as freak. This doesn't excuse my not bugging out much sooner, but it's just to give you some insight in my frame of mind. What I mentioned was pretty much in chronological order. Regarding the cat, not really that unusual. He was an indoor-outdoor cat, so any number of things could have happened to him. A neighbor may have thought that he was a stray and taken him in. He may have been hit by a car while he was out on a prowl. I have no idea. It's more of a, in retrospect, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that crazy bee killed him type of thing. The dogs, now that's much stranger. My ex hated those dogs. They were big and noisy and ran around the upstairs apartment playing all day long. As such, she started a bit of a war with the upstairs neighbor who was herself pretty nuts. I stayed the hell out of it. My ex had said several times that she was going to kill those freaking dogs, but I passed it off as just being annoyed with the constant noise. Hell, I didn't like it either. But otherwise, the apartment was great, so we weren't really too excited to find a new place. The incident, whatever it was, happened while I was at work. I came home to the crazy neighbor screaming at my ex about how my ex somehow coaxed her dogs into jumping from the window. Now my ex was pretty petite, and these were big dogs, so there was no way she could have broken into the neighbor's apartment and physically thrown these dogs out the window. I've owned a few dogs in my life, and no matter how stupid they are, they were never so dumb as to fling themselves out of a window. Now I had no idea what the hell actually happened, and to this day, all of this was probably 20 years ago, I still can't explain it at all. But at this point, I did start looking at my ex from the corner of my eye, just wondering. On to attacking me with scissors and later with a knife. Well, these incidents proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that she was dangerous, but both happened in the heat of a moment, during arguments. As I mentioned earlier, she was quite petite, and I was much faster than her, so I had little trouble disarming her without being really in harm's way. I mean, it wasn't like she was going to try and kill me in my sleep in cold blood, right? Yeah. I forgot to mention there was another attack. She tried to mace me in our apartment. Inside, with the windows closed. I just backed up and raised one eyebrow. Like, what the hell are you even doing? The mace just settled in a big cloud in the middle of the room, missing me entirely. This really made her mad, so she charged at me for another go with her mace can, straight into the cloud that she created. She dropped like a rock and I just rolled my eyes. Okay, come on, let's get you to the bathroom and wash this out. The makeup fun time after was great though. But at this point, the relationship was pretty much over. It was just a matter of actually, officially ending it, which neither of us really seemed to want to do. All of these things, of course, happened over a few years. And of course, in the times between these instances, it was actually all normal boyfriend-girlfriend type stuff. Shopping, vacations, laughter, dinners, and talking about the future. Of course, there was arguments and fights, some her fault, some mine, but most of the time we were both to blame. It wasn't like it was 2 or 3 years of nothing but crazy 100% of the time. Relationships aren't that simple. Anyways, near the end, we both had sort of stopped caring. That's when I caught her hooking up with some guy outside of our apartment. That was the, well, this is 100% done moment. It was failing before, but I had hopes that we could still work through it or something. Like I said, I was young and stupid, and she was hot. But nah, this was done. So I set my mind and attention to finding a new place. I didn't even want to bother fighting over the apartment. It wasn't that nice. I just wanted out. Oddly, we were getting along fine now. We both had accepted it, or so I thought. One day I come home before her and I hop in the shower. The past several days had actually been great. Laughs, hooking up, cooking, like a normal couple. She comes home while I'm still in the shower, walks into the bathroom, turns on her hairdryer, and without a word and without emotion, she just throws it into the shower with me and just dead-eye stared. I pulled a freaking Matrix slow motion action jump, arms out, water droplets slowly falling in some sort of hyper reality, as if, well, someone had just thrown a hairdryer in your shower. Probably yelled, "What the freak?" Then I got dressed and walked the hell out. Came to get my things later with an army of friends. This story was wild. Oh, and by the way, as a warning sign for all the men out there, if your girl ever tries to stab you, get the hell out. I had a friend that almost died when his girl stabbed him while he slept. No girl is hot enough to die for. He cheated and I was stupid and forgave him. 2 months later, I was served with an eviction notice because he lied to my face about having paid rent. I told him that I would give him a chance to work on himself, but I needed space and I would find somewhere apart from him 2 months later when the lease was up. He threatened to end himself 3 times, called me wasted multiple times, switched between "you're the best ever and I love you and I can't live without you" and "you're a lady of the night and you're the worst person ever, die alone." From voicemail to voicemail. By then, I had told him that we were definitely over, but the final nail in the coffin for him was when he drove to my new house wasted to call me names and tried to pull me out of my house. When I told him to leave or I was calling the police, and I just went into my house. He was psychotic and emotionally crazy, and will always be psychotic and emotionally crazy. The crazy bee literally made me choose between her and my mother and sister. She couldn't handle other women in my life. It went beyond not liking me being around them. She would go to crazy far lengths to get me away from any female in the vicinity. She never did that until a month or 2 before we broke up. Glad I did. He literally stopped talking to me after I told him I was SA'd. No breakup, just silence. He never spoke to me again. Art teachers of Reddit, what's the most disturbing artwork a student has ever submitted? My literary arts teacher told us a story about the only kid that's ever been kicked out of the program. He only wrote stories about women being killed and assaulted by snakes. No matter what the writing prompt was, he turned it into snake essay. He then read them out loud to class, proudly. He didn't last too long. Back in the 90s, I volunteered at an art studio that provided free classes for low-income inner-city at-risk youth. Wonderful nonprofit run by a couple of cool old hippie ladies who did an amazing job helping the kids feel free to express themselves artistically, no matter what they wanted to create. For example, one teenage smart butt made an elaborate paper mache of Bob Marley smoking a huge herb stick, and they hung it up proudly in a place of honor. No judgment or preachiness at this art class. So one year, they decided to have the younger kids do a Day of the Dead themed picture, with a short paragraph to commemorate a loved one. The teachers were expecting pictures of grandmas and maybe pets, and there were some of those. There were also several scenes of murder, including childishly drawn guns, knives, and oh, so much red, followed by short descriptions like, "My brother was shot, he's dead now, it was loud and scary, I miss him." These were like 7 to 9-year-olds. Those pictures were displayed just as proudly as the grandma pictures. That sounds like a wonderful program. It really was. They did so much good. And now I'm going to get up on my soapbox about public funding for art for children. Kids growing up in bad situations need role models, job training, education. They also need, like food and oxygen, a place to express themselves, including the anger and pain that they carry that no one wants to listen to because it makes us all feel uncomfortable. In those art classes, I saw angry 9-year-olds who acted like antisocial, jaded 15-year-olds. They were actually relaxed for a change and enjoyed themselves creating something beautiful or ugly or weird, but something they had control over. The look of defiance, then gratitude when a kid would make a picture of a dinosaur stomping on a car wreck and the art teacher would say, "Wow, great use of color and detail," instead of more disapproval, was priceless. The heart and soul of our world is so much more than the bottom dollar line, y'all. I have to say, I absolutely love that these programs let the kids create whatever was on their mind. My earliest memory of writing was when I was in the 4th grade. My teacher had us do a group project where we had to make up a story involving everyone in the group. Well, one big thing that was happening around this time was the series Resident Evil was getting really popular, and I decided to write a story where we were all trapped in the zombie apocalypse like Resident Evil. This story literally had kids getting killed in it because, well, that's what happens in the game. I remember after presenting it to class, everyone wanted to be in the next story because they thought it was so cool. Looking back, I'm glad my art teacher didn't force me to write something different because it might have killed my spirit and robbed me of that moment of people praising my work. High school 1977. While everyone else is drawing Pink Floyd rainbows and peace signs all over everything, the biggest burnout in class makes this wide metal bracelet with intricate triangle designs cut out of it. He turns it in and gets a great grade for the first project he ever bothered finishing, and some well-deserved praise for his effort. Teacher hands the work back, and the first thing he does is grab a pair of pliers and bends all the triangles outward, making a thick metal spiked bracelet. I found that devilishly, disturbingly clever. Told the kids to draw something that would make them happy. One kid scribbled black all over the page and said nothing makes him happy. That student was referred to the school counselor. I was in primary school. The teacher told us to get out our jotters and come up with some ideas for a poem that focused on one particular emotion. I scribbled out and tore up 3 pages. It took hours for me to cheer up. However, there was a good side. There were a pair of jerks in my class who couldn't do anything to save their lives. They always came up to the teacher and asked for help with the age-old, "I can't do it." This time, my teacher pointed at me with my head buried in my arms on my desk and said, "That's what I can't do it looks like. Just because you're in tears doesn't mean you can't be smug." God damn, that art teacher kicked that kid while they were down? That's rough. When I was a camp counselor, I let one of my campers draw while he was waiting for his parents to pick him up. He left his drawing behind and my supervisor picked it up, went over to me and was like, "What the freak is this?" He drew a bunch of dead bodies at the bottom of a staircase, covered in blood, body parts left behind on the stairs, lots of red crayon was used. I didn't find out till later that one of his favorite things to do was play a computer game called Stairfall with his older brother. You know, the flash game where you throw stick figures down a set of stairs to see how badly they can get hurt. I never played that game, but I want to play it now. When I was in kinder, I drew a male ghost going to the bathroom. I had older brothers, so it was very detailed. And I even put a water line in the testes, because that's where I thought they stored the urine. The teachers and principal called in my parents for a serious conference, and asked my dad what he was going to do about the picture. After my dad finished laughing, he told them that he was going to make copies and send it to all of his friends and relatives for Halloween. And he did, and I still have a few extra copies. Oh, and I found out that the balls do not, in fact, store urine. Not me, but I played a huge part. Brother's art class in the 2nd grade was doing those full body tracings on big sheets of butcher paper. They were supposed to trace each other and then draw themselves. My brother evidently refused to draw a face for himself, would not budge on that. Drew everything else, but no face. Wouldn't say why, and because he was super shy and quiet, clammed up more when the teacher started grilling him about it. The art teacher calls the principal because this is concerning. Principal calls school counselor. Counselor meets with my brother, who still won't talk about why he won't draw his face, asking him questions like, "Do you not like yourself? Do you feel bad about yourself?" etc. At this point, he's really clammed up and is now refusing to talk because he's really shy to begin with, and all this questioning is happening. School calls my parents. They have a meeting about the fact that they think my brother is depressed or has some kind of mental issue. Parents freak out, of course, and my brother still won't talk. My parents and counselors start asking if he feels neglected or unloved or some crap. Mom's crying, dad is frustrated, and my brother thinks he's in trouble for something, and I guess in an effort to stop them all acting crazy, he says he doesn't draw his face because he hates someone in the family. Cue full family counseling for like a month. My mom is a wreck, thinks my brother feels like he's neglected, and doesn't love him. So she's constantly like, you know I love you very much, right? Counseling isn't going well because my brother is just quiet and confused. Me, 2 years older than him, is just mad that we always have to be at this office. Finally, during one session, my brother finally cracks. The doctor asks, who is the person in your family that you hate? My brother says, Puss, our cat. She bites me. My dad and mom are stunned. The doctor is surprised, but pushes his advances now that my brother is finally talking. Why didn't you want to draw your face? Do you feel bad about yourself? My brother says, I just wanted OP to do it. She's a better drawer than me. No psychosis, no early childhood trauma, no mental disorder, just an overly concerned art teacher and a little kid who thought it would be best if his older sister drew his face because she's a better drawer than me. It makes me really uncomfortable when teachers push children who are shy like that. I remember seeing stuff like that in art class where students didn't want to talk and teachers would just make huge deals about it, making the situation even worse for kids. There's a way to bring them out, but making a huge scene in front of the class is the worst thing you could do. Bro, all I have to say is after all of that drama, that is an instant chokeslam and powerbomb onto a mattress when we get home, followed by a Shawn Michaels elbow drop. Not a teacher, but in second grade I was infatuated with the battleship Bismarck. I also loved the flag on it, with the red background and white circle with that cool box thingy. We had to build a design to look like a quilt using construction paper. I did mine using the Nazi flag. It looked 100% like it. My teacher didn't say a word, but it was shown to my parents and they burned it. It took me 5 years until I figured out why they did that. Not an art teacher, but in my AP art class in 12th grade, a fellow student in class decided to make an art portfolio with the human fetus as its theme. One piece in particular was a hyper-realistic ink drawing of a tossed salad with little fetuses in lieu of shrimp. If my memory serves me right, they also did a piece that was a martini with the fetus in lieu of the olive on the toothpick. I had a second grader draw a picture of me and him together, and my hand was behind him. He wrote, Coach Kubert likes to touch me. I don't believe I ever touched him, not really the type of person. However, it was pretty embarrassing. Not a teacher, but my daughter came home from kindergarten with this. When I asked what it was, she said, Cookie Monster with his head blown up. And then he peed his pants because his head's blowing up. It's still hanging in her room because she's so proud of it. I didn't realize it at the time, but apparently we have a few copies of this theme. Either my kid is really a psycho, or she remembered that we thought the original was funny and did it again. Her early work was a little too abstract for my taste, but when Cookie Monster with his head blown up and then he peed his pants because his head was blowing up came out in '83, I think she really came into her own. Commercially and artistically, the whole piece has a clear, crisp look, and a new sheen of consumer and professionalism that really gives the composition a big boost. She's been compared to early Basquiat, but I think the OP's daughter has a far more bitter, cynical sense of humor. You remember that Superbad movie scene with the beepies? My friend did that about 15 years before that movie came out, and someone turned it into the teacher. He got suspended for a few days, and his parents had to come in and review the notebook with the principal. I mean, it was filled front to back with peepees. I had this kid, I'll call him Joe. He had special needs and loved movies. He hated everyone but me. I was his first male teacher ever. He would often draw me pictures of Godzilla and King Kong. It was awesome. When he went to the next grade, he drew a picture of his new teacher being eaten by sharks. She freaked out, called a whole bunch of meetings and went nuts. She was saying that she was scared that he wants her dead and she fears for her life. I was asked to have a talk with the kid. I asked him what the picture was and he said that it was the lady from Jaws 4 being eaten by Jaws. We then proceeded to talk about how Jaws 1 and 2 are awesome. I will always sing the praises of a good teacher. My first and second grade teachers absolutely sucked. They were old ladies and they thought I was a troublemaker and often sent me to the office because I wasn't doing my work. It wasn't until the third grade and I had this amazing black teacher who noticed I was struggling and told my parents that I might have dyslexia. Sure enough, I did, and I started getting special help. Even though I hated it at the time, I really appreciate that my third grade teacher didn't just pass me off as the bad kid and really look deeper into what was wrong with me. A friend of mine had to have a meeting with his parents and teachers about his drawing in primary school. They were completely harmless drawings of zoos, houses, trees, etc. But when you viewed them upside down, they showed disturbing images. Obviously, he had no idea what they were going on about and said it wasn't intentional. He's now working in a good job and is completely normal. This kid drew a giant turd on the chalkboard. There was pieces of corn in it too. He said he didn't like Chipotle anymore. A yellow smiley with a sad mouth, with big black words written on it. I want to eat a lot of medicine to end myself. My parents hate me. This kid was 10 years old. Not an art teacher, but there was this kid in my art class who would always draw super dark things. Not so much scary, but more depressing. I figured he might have a crappy home life, and I noticed he didn't really have friends. So I thought I could talk to him and just be friendly. He seemed really nice, just a little weird. Flash forward about 3 months, and wow, I'm glad I was nice to that guy. He got called down to the principal's office during class, and no one knew why. We finally found out that he had written a hit list and had been suspended for a month. Seems a little lax, but whatever. He comes back to class and no one wants to go near him. At the end of class, however, he comes right up to me and says, "Don't worry, you weren't on the list." You had me convinced that you were talking about me right up until had written a hit list. I was the proud artist behind some strange works in community college. A girl in class thought I went through a rough breakup or something and just made nice small talk with me throughout the day. We talked a lot about the music we liked and local restaurants we recommended. I really enjoyed class because I got to spend time with her. It was nice. Well, someone else supposedly interpreted my art differently and told campus police that I was going to shoot up the college Columbine style. Got pulled from the class to talk to police and a social worker. It didn't go well because I got a year's probation for terroristic threats. I still went to class and all, but it was never the same. I always thought that girl I talked to could have just been playing me. I find it crazy that people can just be punished from made up crap. Like, this isn't those people that cry about cancel culture ruining people's lives. This is legit someone made up something and it had an effect on another person's life. I truly think we need harsher punishments for people who make false claims. I had a male college drawing one student who liked to draw pictures of beautiful women screaming. I can see how this could easily be goth or trying too hard to be edgy. It wasn't any of those things. He just really liked pictures of women in distress and seemed obsessed by the idea of it. I jokingly told him to use his powers for good and not for evil, and that it's better to get your emotions out in drawing than in the real world. Not an art teacher, but I'm a volunteer at a center that does art therapy. One of the happiest little clients we ever had handed me a drawing of their deceased mother with their face twisted into a horrified scream. Eyes blackened and brown goop was pouring from the mouth and eyes. Sometimes I stay up at night thinking about it. Oh, and I thought I should verify something. This person's age was mid-20s to 30s. I volunteer at a center for adults with disabilities. I don't know the full details of this client other than they function at a lower mental capacity. My little brother got in trouble for drawing a picture of a polar bear eating a seal. Lots of red crayon was used. He was like 9. I didn't get why it was such a big deal. It's not like it doesn't happen. When I was a kid, I drew a dinosaur eating another one, with an open rib cage and everything. My teacher wanted to send me to a therapist. I just wanted to draw realistic looking scenes. I got in trouble with the teacher who couldn't stand me. We were using the computers and this age-old image just happened to be on some website I was on as an ad for something. One of those crappy ads that is on the side of the screen when you're scrolling down. She called a meeting with the principal and called my mom in. Thankfully, my mom called her out on her BS and pretty much told her to quit being a petty idiot and wasting everyone's time. I almost cried, I was so happy. When I was in high school, a really weird guy would ignore the instructions for any assignment and just draw pictures of people being murdered, cut up, buried alive, all kinds of crazy crap. The teachers never did anything. One day after school, he pulled a knife and stabbed my friend in the hand for being a Jew. Suspended for 2 weeks. He told someone that he was going to shoot up the school like Columbine. Luckily, the person he told went to the police. When they came to the kid's house, they found a rifle and a drawing of the school. He was planning on setting fire in the chemistry lab, and then when people came out of the other side of the building, he was going to start shooting from the bleachers in the football field with a rifle. I don't know what happened after he got arrested, but hopefully he's never freaking getting out of prison. That guy was seriously dangerous. Also, our teachers and school administration were clearly freaking brain dead. How did he not get thrown in jail or juvie for stabbing somebody? Plus, it was a hate crime. Most likely, the school didn't want police involved as it would look bad on them. And the parents pulled some strings not to get him expelled, so he was just suspended. It happens more than it should. I do want to add that this is a horrible and mostly illegal behavior from the school, and it definitely does not happen everywhere, and I want to believe that most schools are against any kind of behavior like that in their administration. But this happens in good schools, where the school's reputation, which helps them attract donors, is so important to them, that even the smallest violent case being reported makes the administration go all defense mode, and try to brush it under the rug in fear of any kind of violence being connected to their name. The fear of their job and money gets the better of them. Obligatory not the art teacher, but in high school we had a kid whose art portfolio was displayed at the school's art show. Numerous drawings, sketches, paintings, etc. of tadpoles. From a single one to dozens to hundreds. A full 2-year art class is dedicated to tadpoles. Until he informed everyone he was drawing sperm. Not the teacher, I was the kid. Little background, grew up in a small beach town and was somewhat known for my artwork and being pretty good artist for a little kid. In the 8th grade, we had to design a deck of playing cards. I was 13 and was going through a really hard time and made a series of super dark cards, like the Fallen King and the Dead Joker, Queen of Human Hearts, Hanged King, etc. I really enjoyed working on them and loved how they turned out. Very dark, but also colorful, like Dolly meets Tim Burton. Anyways, I went to a small private school and our cards were going to be displayed for the art show. Mine weren't allowed in the show and weren't allowed to be displayed for them being too dark, and my teacher said I needed therapy. Which, surprise, I was already in and was told to express my negative feelings through my art, which I did and then got in trouble for and denied a place in the art show. I still have my cards, I still think they are pretty dope. Still bitter about it not being in the art show though. I accidentally made a realistic hoo-ha in my pottery class. This happened to me during one of my ceramic classes in college. The professor was teaching us how to use pottery wheels to make bowls. If you can imagine the act of making a bowl out of clay, the clay is pulled up taller and wider as the pottery wheel spins. I'm doing my thing, making a real nice bowl. Then at a certain point, it all collapsed inwards from two opposite sides. The clay folded in on itself as it fell, and the weight caused the original bowl shape to elongate. I was left with what looked like a perfectly detailed clay hoo-ha. So naturally I left it as it was and fired it, and glazed it. Now years later I sneak it into friends' houses and put it on their bookshelves. When they find it, they shake their heads, laugh, and do the same thing to someone else in the friend cycle. I call it the Brotherhood of the Traveling Hoo-Ha. That's it for this video. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Link at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. It's linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching and we'll see you guys next time.